and welcome to GameSack. This time around we're taking a look at NEC's PCFX, which was the follow-up to the PC Engine.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of you haven't heard of this system. I mean, it was only released in Japan. I've heard of it, of course, but I never really knew a lot about it. And since that's the case, maybe our tech geek over here can fill us in on all about the system.
All right, let's take a look at the PCFX itself.
The NEC PCFX.
NEC released a CD-based 32-bit PCFX in Japan in December of 1994, shortly after the releases of the Sega Saturn and the Sony PlayStation. This was the follow-up to the wildly successful PC Engine, which is known as the TurboGrafx 16 in the US. It was made to resemble a powerful computer tower with upgradable expansion ports. NEC finally realized that having more than one controller port was a good idea, as would be building an AV and S video jacks. It also came stock with a 6-button controller, very similar to the old Duo RX pad. It offered up to 7 different background layers capable of doing different things, as well as 2 sprite layers and over 16 million colors. It even had a layer which could do JPEG video, which NEC heavily banked on to make their new system stand out. Unfortunately, the PCFX was woefully underpowered compared to the Saturn and the PlayStation, offering no 3D capabilities while costing slightly more. This did not bode well for the system, and it was discontinued, selling just over 100,000 units.
Nice, Joe. Some really good info on the system there, and I think that could have been a really strong 2D powerhouse with its 7 layers of background scrolling and whatnot, but
I think actually the Saturn did better at 2D. I mean, it didn't have quite as many layers, but I think it just was a better 2D system.
Yeah, overall. And this one didn't have the 3D capability of the Saturn and the PlayStation, and supposedly NEC just said, whatever, we're out.
Yeah.
Dropped it.
Anyway, let's look at the games that are on this system. We got the first one,
which is always the most important part of the system.
So let's just go.
Team Innocent is an adventure game by Hudson and also a launch game. Firstly, I've got to say that I really don't care for the title of this game. I understand that it stars 3 young innocent girls, but dang, the title makes you feel like a Chester the Molester just turning on the power. Naturally, the whole game is in Japanese, and from what I can figure out, you're on a space station gathering information to try and figure out what happened there. I'm sure I'm wrong, but oh well. After a fairly lengthy intro and a lot of talking, you finally start playing the game. The backgrounds are all pre-rendered CG, which look pretty nice. However, your character is a hand-drawn sprite that's wearing what appears to be a standard uniform of a spandex suit with a G-string. Team Innocent? Yeah, right. Anyway, the game controls and plays similar to Resident Evil. Granted, this game came out long before that one did. You wander around looking for clues and items that will help you progress the story. There's a few enemies scattered about that you can fight. Fighting isn't very easy, and it seems you have to time your attacks or you'll die quickly. There's no life bar or anything that lets you know what your health is, so it's hard to know when you're close to dying or not. Yep, I'm close. Damn! There's only 3 missions here, so overall I think it's probably pretty short. It's an interesting game with some decent music that might actually be pretty fun if I could read the text.
Super God Trooper Zeroigar is the only shooter on the system. You know, that's kind of odd since the PC Engine had more shooters than any other genre. Oh well. Unfortunately, it's an overhead shooter, which just happens to be my least favorite type, but I don't hate them or anything. As with pretty much all PCFX games, you'll get tons of anime cutscenes explaining the story. You start out as a weak airplane which can be slightly powered up, but once you get to the boss of stage 1, you're suddenly playing as a mech which will last you the rest of the game. This kinda looks like Musha or maybe even Spriggan, but it's a far cry from either of those in my opinion. Sadly, your ship moves way too fast, even on the slowest setting, so you're going to be running into a lot of things until you get used to it. And even then you're going to be running into a lot of things because you're huge and there's lots of enemy projectiles. You have a ton of different sub-weapons which you can select through with a menu. Each of these has their own meter and they last a different amount of time depending on how much you fire them. This is also one of the very few games that takes advantage of the mode switch on the PCFX pad. Switch mode 1 to B for automatic continuous fire. You have a life bar and you can take several hits before you die. You can also collect power-ups to beef up your weapons a bit. But what's really interesting is that this game features a leveling up system. You gain experience in the levels and it's tallied up when you win the stage or even when you die. Here it shows me leveling up from 10 to 11, I assume. Now, how this affects the actual gameplay, I wasn't really able to precisely determine, but you do really level up because I found that once you die and continue and try that stage again, you suddenly seem a little bit more powerful and it's just a little bit easier overall. But the really good news is that when you power up your firepower and anything touches you, your firepower goes down. So I'd really recommend not touching anything, but honestly, I'd recommend that for every shooter ever made. The graphics are pretty good and they have some nice color. It almost looks like a Super Nintendo game visually, except there's way too much stuff on screen and everything is moving around way too fast. Still, it does show off some cool things here and there, like a scaling and rotation effect. The music is pretty good and I think it's worth ripping to your iPod or Android device. Too bad there's no sound test or Red Book audio tracks. I don't know what all of the different options in the title screen do, but one let me pick different characters to try out Stage 2 with. Another one gave me an alternate version of Stage 1 that faded out for no reason that I could discern as I was fighting the boss. This is obviously a timed caravan mode. To be honest, I absolutely hated this game at first, but after playing it for a while, I grew to moderately enjoy it. But in the grand scheme of shooters, it's really nothing tremendously special.
Let's take a look at Boundary Gate, Daughter of Kingdom. It's a first-person RPG by Polestar. The game is completely in Japanese and there are no walkthroughs online that I could find, so I did the only thing that I could do, wander around aimlessly until I got stuck. This took about 15 or 20 minutes as I was stopped at 3 different doors and couldn't progress. The good thing is that I think I got a good feel for what the game is like in that short time. You walk around in first-person mode. The map in the corner is very helpful. As you can see, the backgrounds in this area all look very similar, and without the map I would have been completely lost. Just like any other RPG, you talk to people all over from shops to taverns. When you do get into a battle, it's no longer displayed in first-person mode, but plays similar to most other JRPGs out there. At least this part I was able to fumble my way through and figure out how to attack and how to heal. I like that after I killed this guy, they show his gooey corpse, which was drawn really cool. I think they did a fairly good job with this game in terms of graphics and the way it makes it look like it's scaling. The music here seems to be pretty good, and I liked it for what it was worth. It'd be pretty fun to see what happens later in this game, as in if you're just confined to towns and dungeons or if you actually get out into the open world to wander around.
Battle Heat was one of the launch games for the system. It's a fighting game, but not in the traditional sense. This is more like an FMV game that you'd see on the Sega CD, but perhaps even less controllable. Each side can choose one of 4 players. That's right, if you want to play as this Belmont-looking guy, you need to use controller 2. Anyway, you get into the game and you must input fighting commands and then the animation plays out. You have strong and light attacks, a guard, a jump, and special moves. Unfortunately, the timing really sucks and you never know if a move you input is going to work. At first I tried using Street Fighter moves and I definitely recommend not doing that. Instead, your attacks are extremely basic, like pressing a direction and an attack button. The computer will almost always counterattack, and since it's pre-rendered animation, you have very little time to respond. I was able to win a few matches though. The game looks really cool and the music seems to use the PC Engine sound chip. Still, I really didn't enjoy any time I spent with this one. I mean, who thought a game like this would be a good idea? Well, somebody did, because we also have Tengai Makyu Karakuri Kakutoden. Well, that's a mouthful. This is pretty much the same game as Battle Heat, but with Tengai Makyo characters instead. Tengai Makyo 2 was the best-selling game on the original PC Engine, so I guess they figured that people would flock to the PC effects for another game in the series, although it's completely different. Anyway, I have an even harder time playing this one. Building the blue bar at the bottom of the screen appears to have something to do with your attacks, but blue bar or no, my attacks rarely hit. The good news is that either player can choose any character now. Also, the animation is cooler and it has a lot more personality to it. In fact, it's some damn nice looking FMV. But rarely do you see both characters on the screen at the same time. Once again, the PC Engine chip is used for the music, and I'm almost convinced that the PCFX has an entire PC Engine built inside of it somewhere. It's too bad it's not backwards compatible. They must have really thought this was the future of gaming back then. Kind of sad.
Blue Breaker. This is another RPG game, and again I played it until I got stuck, which took about 30 minutes. Damn me and my lack of Japanese! Well, I must say that from an aesthetic point of view, this is a good-looking game. It starts as most PCFX games do, with an anime intro. I like the art style of the characters here, and the animation is pretty good. After another lengthy intro and some dialogue, you're asked some questions. Of course, I just picked some random answers, and the next thing I knew, I was slung into battle. The battles look good, and your character is super deformed, and I don't have a problem with that. What I do mind is that the picture of your character on the top of the screen has no eyeballs. Did they forget, or was that on purpose? And if it was on purpose, why? Battle is really strange in this game. I don't know if it was an option I turned on randomly, but it was set to auto battle. At first I was trying to input commands, but it wasn't having any of that, so I just sat back and watched. In the half hour that I played, I didn't do any wandering around, but was automatically placed at the next story point. First I was at a bar and I chose every option I could to see what would happen, and then I was put in a cave with some enemies that were much tougher than me. I fought and died a couple of times, and then I just started running from every battle so I could try and get somewhere. I found a treasure chest, and then I found the end of the cave and searched it, but nothing happened. I went back to the bar and then back to the cave again, but was stuck after trying everything I could, so I quit. I really think this would be a fun game to play if it wasn't for the damn language barrier. The music's great, and so are the artwork and backgrounds. It's a shame I'm so damn old, or I'd try and learn Japanese, but I'd die of old age before I could learn enough to play these RPGs.
Welcome to Pia Carrot is a dating sim. These have been popular in Japan for a while. This is also the only PCFX game that I know of that has an English fan translation. Anyway, you play the role of some dude who goes to work at his dad's diner. You're surrounded by a ton of hot anime chicks and your goal is to get a girlfriend. You have a limited amount of freedom in what you do and it affects your stats. You can also control the direction of the conversation with certain people depending on if you like them or not. Fortunately, the working in the diner aspect is done automatically for you, and you really only control yourself during breaks and your time off. If you tickle a girl's fancy, then you two can hook up, and yes, there's plenty of nudity in this game. Well, what passes for nudity in Japan anyway. And no, I can't show you here because YouTube would probably go nuts, but if you're curious, then you've likely already seen similar images online anyway. All of the images from your encounters are saved into the system memory for you to, utilize later, I guess? Honestly, I feel kinda creepy playing this game. And of all the PCFX games out there, why is this the one that somebody chose to translate? I guess we know what the priority is in the PCFX community. Pick it up if you like interactive anime softcore porn.
Miraculum is an RPG by Rayforce. Yeah, I haven't heard of Rayforce the developer either. They've only done a handful of RPGs and none of them left Japan. Of all the JRPGs I've played so far for the PCFX, this is the most traditional feeling of them all. There's lots of story going on here. It's done in a mix of voice acting and text bubbles. I'm sure it's a truly amazing tale that would have me glued to my chair if I could understand it. But I can't, so oh well. I just did my best to talk to everybody so I could trigger the storyline, and I was able to fumble around and find my way fairly well. The battles are all pretty bland in the way they look, but at least it's easy to guess which button command is a basic attack and which one is a special attack that drains your magic points. I guess it's magic points because the number by my stats is getting smaller every time I use it. I was pretty amazed at the few times I actually leveled up. I mean, the second time it happened, I got a 63-point jump in my hit points. That never happens! For the short time that I played this, it was fun to wander around the towns in the overworld map exploring to see what kind of trouble I could get myself into. Well, I guess I wandered a bit too far because I met a few enemies that handed out some heavy damage to my sorry-ass level 3 character. He met his doom, and I almost continued playing because I was actually enjoying myself listening to the decent soundtrack and exploring, but I decided not to. Something was missing, and it was me. I actually do need a bit of story to keep me interested, and since there is no FAQ or translation, I'll just end it right here.
All right, Dave, what are you thinking of the PCFX so far? Is it a worthy follow-up to the PC Engine?
From the games that I played, no, it is not a worthy follow-up for sure. I mean, first and foremost, the language barrier was obviously huge for me. I didn't understand.
So you'd probably enjoy it more if you could read them.
Oh, of course, by all means. And of course, I don't mind some anime, intros and cutscenes, but
they totally banked on them.
Yeah, that was just a little overload. But
yeah, anyway, we've got more games coming up, so maybe there will be a good one in there. Let's take a look.
Maybe two, I hope.
Power Dolls FX is a military strategy game. You're in charge of an all-female fighting force and their mechs. The gameplay is fairly basic, but it's still fun. Select the character you want to move, and if you're within range of the enemy, you can choose how to attack. You have a bunch of different weapons to choose from, and some of these weapons can reach multiple enemies if they're all grouped close together. And as you'd expect, each side takes a turn and politely waits for the other side to finish before attacking again. The maps don't look like anything that couldn't be done on the PC Engine, but the close-up scenes of the equipment can look fairly nice. The music is also pretty good with some pumping tunes that hopefully you won't get tired of too quickly. I didn't.
Raruli Rarura is a comedy adventure game.
Whoa, Dave, what was the name of that game again?
Raruli Rarura. Raruli Rarura.
Sound like Scooby-Doo or something trying to say that.
It starts off with a corny anime intro that has a really wacky song. Playing the game is pretty fun. You start with the samurai character and he only has one attack right off the bat. As you explore the game world, your play will be interrupted by cutscenes here and there. There's a lot of these at first, and they'll either further the story or you'll gain something from them. Like when I opened this treasure chest after a cutscene and now I have a sword attack. Cool! Not only is this a new attack, I can now access areas I couldn't before. You'll also gain new characters to play as, and once you free them, they'll join you. I thought it was game over for me until I figured out how I could change characters, as I was pretty much stuck. As you'd guess, each character has different abilities. All of them control similarly, but they all have one really annoying feature. For some stupid reason, when you jump forward. You can't just jump straight up because, that would be really helpful. Climbing this thing would have been super easy if you could jump straight up, but now it's a total chore and takes up a lot of time. This game was announced in November 1995, but wasn't released until February of 1998. You'd think that with almost 2.5 years of development, they would have caught this. Oh well. The music is enjoyable for the most part, and I did laugh at some of the cutscenes as they're pretty funny. This is a decent game that'll stay forever lost with the PCFX as there's no port of it anywhere.
Der Langrisser FX is a really cool strategy RPG. It's a port of the Super Famicom game of the same name, which itself is largely based on Langrisser 2 for the Mega Drive. And of course, that's the sequel to War Song on the Genesis. Being all in Japanese, this one is pretty tough to figure out. I had to play a translated version of the Super Famicom game in order to figure out the menus. Once I figured that stuff out, I was able to do well enough to get at least some footage. If you're used to games like Shining Force, you'll have to take some time to get used to this. The battles are more like Military Madness rather than Shining Force, as you have a bunch of units rather than just one-on-one fights. This version also features some anime cutscenes and some kick-ass music. Overall, I'd say that this is a game that I'd really want to get into if I could read it, but if you want to play it in English, play the translated version on the Genesis or the Super Nintendo somehow. I do think the battle scenes look best on the Genesis, but the voice effects are pretty bad. This is a fantastic game for the PCFX, if you can read Japanese. Now why didn't this one get a fan translation?
The Last Imperial Prince is another RPG for the system. Well, it's listed as an RPG, but I felt it was more of an action RPG. I'm sure there's a truly fascinating story here as you start the game in the middle of the action. Some strange girl is being attacked and the chivalrous guy you are ends up helping her out. She eventually falls to a cheap shop but doesn't die and gets taken to town for the healing. I really like the way you play this game. I like that everything is on a side view and there are no overhead parts that I came across. You control your character in a real-time fight. At first I was really liking how this was playing out. You fight one enemy at a time, and once you defeat him, the next one comes at you. All through the battle, you collect gold that jumps at you from your enemies, and that was fun to collect. After a bunch of battles, though, it started to feel very tedious. I'd kill an enemy in hopes of seeing no more appear at the edge of the screen, but they just kept showing up. Each enemy type has a different attack style, so you have to learn when to attack and when to dodge. The problem is you have very little reaction time, so I more or less just try to anticipate their attack to catch them off guard. This would cause the enemy to block most of the time, and it just got really boring. One thing I found interesting is when your main character dies and you take control of his partner. When you finally win, your main character comes back to life and gains experience. It feels a little like cheating, but I didn't mind. I think if the developers had tweaked the battles a bit more to make them more easy to control, then this would have been a great game. Overall, this was a fun experience and one of the better RPGs that I had a chance to play.
Kenshin Doji Zenki FX, aka Demon Prince Zenki, is a beat-em-up based on an anime, of course. You can play as a girl or what appears to be a small feral boy named Zenki. You have an attack, block, and a jump button. If you put the Mode 1 switch to B, then the top row of buttons can be used for special attacks. Zenki fights best at close quarters and the girl fires projectile attacks. Generally, I like playing as Zenki more. There's lots of boss fights in this, and there's lots of drama between everything as well. The drama actually adds to the frenetic feeling of the game, and I don't usually like the talky stuff wedged into and in between the actual gameplay. But here, it absolutely works. Sometimes a guy will run in and drop a banana which gives you some life back, or a ring which will turn you into a bigger, more powerful Zenki. If you're playing as a girl and get the ring, then Big Zenki comes in and he does a special attack and delivers a ton of damage. The graphics are really nice. Some of the stages are fairly basic looking, but that's okay because I think the style works well for the game. I really like this death train with the skeletons that keep attacking you. They go down, but they don't stay down, just like the red skeletons in the Castlevania game. There's lots of independently scrolling layers here, and the PCFX has a ton of them, and I'm glad to see them being shown off. The animation is also really cool. The music gets the job done with tunes that add to the pace and the tension. I've got to admit, I was confused at first while playing this game because there's a lot of actual gameplay and action. Is this really a PCFX game? This doesn't make sense. The system had more potential than we generally see, and playing this one makes me sad that we didn't see that much effort put into many other games on the platform. This is an absolute must-own if you have a PCFX, and the language barrier doesn't bring anything down. Oh, and it's 2-player simultaneous too.
This is Firewoman Matoi Gumi. I really don't know what this game is about, but from what I can deduce, you might be a teacher at an all-girls school. Or you might be there just to protect them because you get into battles with some random punks that seem to come onto campus just to cause troubles. The game goes by the days of the week, and Monday through Friday you can walk around and find activities to do like play soccer, tennis, kung fu, and even sumo. These activities are really boring because you don't actually take part in them, but instead you watch your character go through the motions. Once he's done, he gains hit points and his rank goes up. All this is necessary to battle these thugs that randomly show up. The battles are all really weird. You input battle commands before a fight starts. One is attack and the other is maybe defense? Either way, I fought a couple of battles and got my ass kicked both times. Maybe I didn't do enough training and my character is super weak. There's lots of dialogue and lots of menus. It even has GPS, or as the game calls it, gal positioning system, and I won't share my dirty joke about that because this is a family-friendly show. I really wish that I knew what was going on here, so I might actually enjoy this game. But wandering around aimlessly and stupid as I'm doing here just isn't entertaining. Let me know if you played this game and what you thought. It was also released on the PlayStation if you must play this game but don't have a PCFX.
Farland Story FX is another strategy RPG. As always, there's lots of anime since this is a PC FX game. It must have been required or something. The actual gameplay is pretty basic. It's easy enough to pick up even if you don't know the language. The battles are one-on-one just like Shining Force, and they require a hell of a lot more loading. Everything here is pretty average, and I can't really recommend it unless you find it for a couple of bucks. A slightly better strategy RPG is Dragon Knight 4 by NEC Avenue. This one begins with fairly well fleshed out towns and a bunch of story. There's a ton of text in this game, but since I can't read it, there's really no reason to let it waste my time. So I just speed through it like a mofo. Basically, you appear to be a 10-year-old kid who goes on a quest for some reason. And since you're 10 years old, girls will disrobe when you talk to them. That always happened to me when I was 10. Once you get to the meat of the game, it's pretty easy, though the cursor is extremely twitchy. The graphics and the sound are all PC Engine quality, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, unless you paid more than a PlayStation or a Saturn cost to buy this system. Basically, it just means that this game should have been on the PC Engine. The cutscenes do contain some high color stills, though. It's not a horrible game, I suppose.
Chip Chan Kick is an action platform game. The introduction cutscene is nothing more than a pedophile's dream intro with little girls in panties and crap like that. I really wanted to turn this game off while watching this as I felt totally disgusted by it. After getting past that crap, the actual game starts and it plays very similar to Bubble Bobble. You run around a single screen dazing the enemies and then fleeing them, which destroys them. The controls are simple and the game is really fun to play. Defeated enemies will leave items to grab which give you points or power-ups when you collect them. There's no time limit for each round, but if you do take a long time, a little demon guy will appear and follow you around. He'll even shoot at you, so it's worth it to keep moving. Each stage is cleared once you defeat all of the enemies. Every 10th stage ends in a boss fight that's fairly entertaining. The game controls nicely, and the levels are all laid out fairly well. Touching enemies without them being stunned will take one of your lives. A life bar would have been nice, but you do have a fair amount of credits to burn through, so you can keep going for a while. I think the actual game itself is really fun and probably the best game that I played for this episode. The gameplay graphics are simple but well done and the music is pretty damn good. It was done by Hitoshi Sakamoto, who's done other stuff like Gauntlet 4 and Midnight Resistance on the Genesis, as well as other things like Ogre Battle, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Gradius 5. I really wish the developers would have went in a different direction as far as the story goes, because what they have here is pretty disgusting. So if you ever do play this game, just skip the intro and get right to it.
And finally, this is, and I need to be very careful on how I pronounce this, Nurgens? Anyway, in the opening cutscene that plays after the title screen, it appears that you were stranded and then rescued by a giant airplane. Once you're on the plane and after a lot of dialogue, you're free to wander around. This is all done digital comic style, which is kind of cool. Well, I mean it would be if you knew the language. I wonder what they've got under this sheet. Anyway, I just make sure to choose every single option twice before I leave an area just to progress things along. I like how you have a map so you can choose where to go on the plane. Anyway, eventually something happens and the thing they were hiding under the sheet is a secret plane for you to use to battle enemies. You take off to save the day, or maybe conquer it, I don't know. And here you go, folks, this is the extent of the 3D graphics on the 32-bit PCFX system. You fly around trying to destroy the enemy in super sweet dogfighting action. Actually, it's kind of weird to control. There's lots of menus and stuff. When you finally do kill an enemy, it dies via a CG FMV cutscene, which really isn't very satisfying. While fumbling through the menus, I was able to figure out how to transform into a mech. Anyway, you have limited ammo, and once it runs out, there's really nothing for you to do other than turn off the power and stop playing. I can't figure out how to resupply myself or return to my ship via the menus. And I can't find my ship by flying around looking for it either. The graphics are less than Super Nintendo and Sega CD quality, and so is the music. Gonna have to recommend that you pass on this one. All right, there's the PCFX for you. Dave, let me ask you a question. Which did you enjoy more, this or the CDI?
That is a good question. God, I enjoyed this more. I'll say that for sure. I did like some of the RPGs that I played, even though I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the action of them, the graphics and whatnot. And I really liked that Bubble Bobble Chip Chan Kick game that I played.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fun, minus the total pedophile,
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was more interesting than the CDI. I had a harder time maybe finding a lot of games to play for this episode than the CDI. But there are a couple of standout titles like Zenki and I guess Zroigar to a lesser degree, even though I'm not a huge shooter fan. Not an overhead shooter fan, that is.
Yeah.
It's not a horrible game.
No, yeah, for sure, it's not a horrible game. But that poor CDI, but nothing's really below that anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, what are your favorite PCFX games? Have you ever even heard of the system? What did you think of the system from what we showed you? Let us know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. All right, Dave, check out this PCFX game. Maybe you can review it?
Yeah, dude, let's play it. Let me play it and then I'll see. Maybe I'll review it. That's a good idea.
Just gotta get it loading here. Oh, surprise, surprise, an anime intro. Let's watch it because if we skip the anime intro, we're skipping half the game.
Right, and I will be totally lost.
Yes.
You got a booger in your mustache.
Jesus, is this ever gonna end? Dave, title screen.
About time.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, no!
All right, dude.
Okay, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, this is probably another 20 minutes. I'll see you, dude.
Hello and welcome to GameSack. We are finally talking about the Neo Geo Pocket Color.
A really cool handheld system with a really short lifespan.
Indeed.
Yeah, too bad. But anyways, as per usual, why don't you take us through the system?
Okay, here's a little bit about the system itself.
The Neo Geo Pocket Color!
SNK released a Neo Geo Pocket handheld in Japan near the end of 1998. This was a black and white system with only 10 games that were ever released for it. That's because SNK released the fully backwards compatible Neo Geo Pocket Color in Japan in early 1999 and everywhere else later that same year. The portable launched at $70 and features a 2.6-inch screen that unfortunately is not backlit. It does have, however, a very nice microswitch D-pad. The system would last nearly 40 hours with two AA batteries and also had a lithium battery to power the calendar and the clock. It has a 16-bit main processor along with a Z80 to handle the sound. It has a screen resolution of 160 by 152 and it can put up to 146 colors on screen out of a total of 4,096 to choose from. In addition to a standard link cable, the Neo Geo Pocket Color could also link up to the Sega Dreamcast and share data with compatible games. 83 games were released for the system and it sold just under 2 million units and it was discontinued in 2001 thanks to SNK being purchased by Aruze.
All right, Joe, thanks. That was very informative and short, just like everybody likes it.
Okay, and for this episode, in order to capture the gameplay, we had to resort to emulation. But, it's a Neo Geo Pocket Color. How else are you going to do it?
Right.
And, whatever. And in the meantime, let's just get to looking at some games.
Y'all ready?
Let's start off with Metal Slug First Mission. I was so happy when this game was released as it's one of my favorite running guns. As you'd expect, this game isn't as grand as the Neo Geo original, but it's still a great game that's really fun to play. The action is solid here, and the game will give you a good challenge. Being that there are only 2 buttons on this system, the developers had a hard time figuring out how to map jumping, shooting, and grenade tossing. Well, they did it, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. There's a dedicated jump button, and you toggle between your weapon and grenades by pressing the option button. It works, but it's an extra step, and I found myself rarely using grenades because of this. Other than that, the game is great fun. The graphics are nicely detailed. There's some good overlapping parallax scrolling, which you didn't often see in portable games back when this was new. The sound is great, and while the audio has fewer and weaker channels to work with, the feel of the original music is there.
Metal Slug Second Mission.
Metal Slug's second mission was released a year later, and it was mostly more of the same. This isn't a bad thing, as again, you're treated to a solid experience. The best part about this game is that they fixed the problem of tossing grenades. Now, instead of toggling between your gun and grenades by pushing the option button, they made it so that it just tosses the grenades. This is much better than it was before.
Rocket launcher.
As with the previous game, everything looks and sounds great. They even added some voice to the game when you pick up weapons, which is really cool.
Pineapple.
And just like the previous entry, when you defeat enemies, they often drop power-ups. But you have to be fast because these things disappear only after a few seconds. While both Metal Slug games are great, I definitely do prefer the second one here more. If you own the system, these are 2 games that you cannot be without.
Heavy machine gun. Rocket launcher.
Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure might have been the first time I saw Sega themselves develop something else for another console. I mean, the Dreamcast was still a thing at the time. So of course I had to get it since I had a Neo Geo Pocket already anyway. Basically, this is kind of a stripped down version of Sonic 2, but thankfully Tails doesn't follow you around in this one. If you've never played Sonic before, the gameplay is pretty simple. You just need to make it to the end of the stage and defeat the boss at the end of every second stage. You collect rings, and as long as you have at least one, you can take a hit, but then you lose all of your rings. However, you can recollect a few of them if you're quick enough. Collect 50 rings and keep them, and then you'll go to a bonus stage. These are taken straight from Sonic 2 as well. I don't like them. But if you do as the bonus stage commands by continuing to collect an increasing amount of rings, you'll get a Chaos Emerald or something. I really don't know because I don't like playing the bonus stages, so I just try to make sure I don't finish a stage with 50 or more rings. Overall, it's a decent rendition of a 2D Sonic game. The scrolling is kind of hesitant at times, and the control is nowhere near as good as the real Genesis versions. It definitely takes some getting used to. The graphics are pretty damn nice, but I was kind of disappointed that there were no multi-layered scrolling backgrounds like there were in the Metal Slug games. And for that reason, it kind of looks more like a Game Gear game, though I do think this game is better than the Game Gear versions. The music is pretty good, and I really appreciated how it was different in each and every zone. I really like the boss music. Anyway, if you have a Neo Geo Pocket Color, I say go for it, especially if you like 2D Sonic.
King of Fighters R1 was a black and white game for the Neo Geo Pocket. Of course, this one works on the color model as well. Basically, you can play a single match like normal fighting games, or you can choose team mode. This lets you choose from 3 different characters. To win a match, you must defeat all of the other team's different characters in that stage. Everything controls really well, and this one is lots of fun. But the sequel called King of Fighters R2 is in full color. This is based on King of Fighters 98, and I've got to say it's a very solid game. As everyone knows, playing a fighting game with only 2 buttons must automatically suck, but damn, SNK really did a good job making this game not suck at all. You still have a light and heavy punch and kick, and it's really easy to pull off moves. Tapping a button will do a light action, while holding the button down will do a heavy action. The gameplay is great, feels very true to the arcade games, and as you can see, it has really nice character design and good looking backgrounds. You can't go wrong with either of these titles, but King of Fighters R2 is definitely the one to have.
Dark Arms Beastbuster 1999 is kind of a horror-themed action RPG. It's actually a spin-off of one of SNK's earlier arcade games called Beastbusters. Anyway, your main gun has a spirit catcher and you're tasked with killing and capturing spirits of demons and monsters. The gameplay takes place with an overhead run-and-gun style. Once a monster dies, you obtain its soul. Because monsters have souls, they're people too. Anyway, you feed these souls to your gun to power it up. Sound weird? Well, that's probably because it is. You'll want to power up and evolve your gun as quickly as you can because initially it's extremely weak. It has its own gauge which needs to have some life on it before it can fire, and it refills fairly slow, so you often need to be defensive while you wait. The game itself is pretty cool. You wander around collecting hints and keys and whatnot. There's even some puzzles you need to solve in order to advance. The game has day and night settings, and different monsters will be present depending on when you visit. Some places are inaccessible during the day and vice versa. You'll eventually get some weapons that kick ass, and these can kill monsters quickly and even recharge more quickly. But you need to be using your default gun for the killing shot if you want to collect the monster soul and feed it to your gun later. The graphics are all pretty good with a lot of variety in the places that you visit. Even the music is somewhat entertaining and it never got on my nerves. This is one of the best original games for the system and I highly recommend you give it a go if you can.
Samurai Showdown appeared in black and white on the Neo Geo Pocket. This one is based on the first game and you can choose from 12 different characters. It plays quite well for a portable game if a touch slow. The graphics look really nice all things considered. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the scaling of the original Neo Geo game, but that's not really surprising since it doesn't even have the color of the original Neo Geo game. The music has that ancient Japanese feel to it that fits so well. Samurai Showdown 2 is also a great entry for the portable system. This game is based off of Samurai Showdown 64 on the short-lived Hyper Neo Geo 64 arcade system. It retains 99% of playable characters. What's really impressive is that you can choose between slash and bust mode and most of the moves for each character are present. It's really amazing what SNK was able to do with their system. I don't know what it is about handhelds, but they hold a certain charm. I love the music and backgrounds because they're trying their best to be like the original game and on some levels it works and captures the feel quite well. Samurai Showdown 2 isn't my favorite fighting game on the system, but it's very enjoyable.
Rockman Battle and Fighters is kind of interesting. Basically, it's kind of a Mega Man boss battle fighting game. You start by choosing who you want to play as. Then you get to choose which set of games you want to fight a few of the bosses from. Then off you go into battle. The bosses don't fight exactly like they did in their original games, but they do share similarities. Once you defeat a boss, you steal his weapon and you can use it in future battles if you have enough weapon power. I really didn't find any of these tremendously advantageous over the normal gun. Sometimes your enemy will run off the screen and that can be kind of annoying, especially if he starts attacking you from out there. There's also another mode of the game where it chooses the order of the bosses for you and you collect coins and even get helper items like your rush dog. The graphics are bright and colorful and the music's pretty good as well, though it doesn't sound anywhere near as good as the original NES versions. Overall the game is kind of fun, but it didn't keep my interest like a real Mega Man game would. Oh, and this game was released only in Japan. Here's The Last Blade, which is a portable version of the Neo Geo game. I've always liked the fighting games on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, even if they are kinda simple. Actually, I take that back. They only look simple, but the gameplay is actually very deep and involved. It's a lot more than one usually expects of a portable game back in this day and age. Anyway, this is a weapons-based fighter with a very Japanese flavor to it. You can choose from 9 different characters. Since the Neo Geo Pocket Color only has 2 buttons, that's what you have to work with here. One swings your weapon and the other is a personal attack like a kick. The micro-switch D-pad works extremely well for pulling off moves. Maybe that's what makes fighting games on this system so enjoyable. I'm glad that they kept the cool stage introductions from the Neo Geo version here. They definitely add to the overall presentation. The backgrounds usually look great, but the characters look extra simple as they're just in black and white with one single color. But that doesn't affect the gameplay at all. The music is also very simple but still enjoyable. I definitely recommend this one.
SNK vs. Capcom Match of the Millennium is the first crossover game that I ever played. If you haven't played it, then you're definitely missing out. It's a fighting game that features characters from both SNK and Capcom. This game is amazing. It's filled with so much awesomeness that you might feel like you've died and gone to heaven. So firstly, you have tons of fighters to choose from each franchise. You can choose whether you like the Capcom style where you build up a level meter and unleash super attacks, or an SNK style where you build up a charge meter. You can fight battles as a single fighter, or you can tag team. The control works really well thanks to the nice D-pad, and I never had trouble pulling off moves that I'm going for. And to top it all off, this game has great music and really good graphics. Also included are two really fun mini-games. The first one is from the Metal Slug series. In this one you shoot down aliens with crosshairs. There's also a Ghouls and Ghosts game here. The object of this game is to grab bags of gold, all while dodging Firebrand. Fighting games don't get much better than this on the portable systems, especially ones from the late 90s. This is easily my favorite game for the handheld, and one of the only reasons why I turned the system on to this day.
All right, Dave, you liking the Neo Geo Pocket Color so far?
I'm liking it. I've always liked it. Of course I'm liking this, Joe.
Cool, so what the hell are we doing here? Let's get back to more games. I bought Neo Turf Masters on a whim back in the day when it came out. I didn't expect a whole lot, but I was very pleasantly surprised. This is a great portable golf game. Don't worry, I won't waste too much of your time talking about a dumb old sports game, but it's a really good one. Anyway, it has an overhead view and it's extremely easy to get into. You can choose from different golfers, each with their own attributes, but I always choose the young hero since I myself am a hero. Playing golf and saving lives, that's what I do. Anyway, the young hero has average stats all across the board, and I myself am also average. You also get to choose from 3 different courses. The graphics and the music are simple but great at the same time. I'd always play this one at work on my downtime, and it really helped the end of the day or night come more quickly. Imagine my surprise years and years later when I discovered that this was based on a Neo Geo game of the same name. Oh yeah. Definitely get this one if you like video golf games. There were also a couple of baseball games, the first of which is Baseball Stars Color. That's right, there's a black and white version of this game on the original Neo Geo Pocket. You pick from fictional teams and play in your choice of a dome or a stadium. Overall, pretty much everything about this is average at best. I feel that the fielding is really slow and trying to throw a ball to a base is like an exercise in frustration. It's certainly not horrible, but it could have been done so much better. I do like the crazy graphics when you get a home run though. There was also Dynamite Slugger by ADK, the same peeps behind Magician Lord for the Neo Geo. This one was only released in Japan. Here is countries battling each other for the literal World Series. Again, the game is pretty average. The batter and pitcher graphics are a bit better than Baseball Stars, but the fielding graphics are extremely simple. The music seems like it's old royalty-free stuff, kinda like the stuff you'd hear in early arcade games. I guess you just can't get an amazing baseball game on the system, and that's too bad.
Another fun sports game is Pocket Tennis Color. Of course, Joe lets me cover this one since he despises everything about tennis. His loss though, as it's a pretty damn good game. You start by picking your character, each with a different set of skills. Of course the one named David is completely bald, just like me. He also kind of sucks at playing tennis, also just like me. Anyway, you then choose your court, and these range from a typical tennis court to places that have weeds growing all over them. The game plays pretty well and it's easy enough to figure out. What's kind of cool is that during a set it sometimes changes from day to night as the matches go on and on. I thought that this was a pretty cool little touch. I also like the lively music. The graphics are good, but one thing that kind of bothers me is that the screen is constantly scrolling up and down. Sometimes my character almost goes off screen and that's not good. It's kind of distracting. But other than that, this is a great game if you like tennis.
There's even more fighters to choose from on the system, like Fatal Fury First Contact. This one is a competent one-on-one fighter. Gone is the ability to switch planes like in normal Fatal Fury games, but I'm totally okay with that because I never really cared for that anyway. The fighting action is... Wait, did Mai just blow fire out of her ass? I guess that's one of her special moves. Anyway, the fighting action is pretty good, so if you see this one for what appears to be a good price, I say pick it up. SNK Gals Fighters is an all-female fighting game featuring SNK's best. It seems like a more modern 2D fighter with plenty of humor and flashy special moves. In fact, I'd describe its fast and floaty feel to that of a Darkstalkers game. And trust me, that's a good thing. The only downside is that it might be a bit too easy, but just turn up the difficulty if that's an issue for you. The control is great with moves that are fun and easy to pull off, which is extremely not the norm for SNK fighting games. You build a gauge at the... Did she just show me the corpse of someone she killed? Anyway, as I was saying, like most SNK fighters, you fill a gauge at the bottom of the screen which lets you do extra special attacks. You can also learn items as you play. If you choose to use these, they'll make your game even easier by lowering your opponent's life bar from the get-go and things like that. I really don't think that the game is hard enough for these to be necessary, but hey, maybe you do? Anyway, check it out, it's light, bouncy fun.
Card Fighters!
This is Card Fighters Clash, SNK vs. Capcom. It's a card battling game that lets you battle it out with a friend or the game's AI. There's two versions of this game, one for Capcom and the other for SNK. The differences between the two are simple. If you pick the Capcom version, your starting deck of cards will have more Capcom characters and vice versa for the SNK version. Each version does have some specific cards, so you'd have to buy both versions of the game if you want to have them all. So the goal of this game is to win lots of card battles with many different opponents. You have cards to attack your opponent's card, and they can gang up and whatnot. If you have any attacking cards left over after attacking the other cards, then your opponent is directly attacked and loses HP. This goes on until you or your opponent's HP reaches 0. You do have an overworld map that you can traverse and find other players to get into battle with. There's not a lot going on graphically, but the music is pretty enjoyable. It's a pretty simple game to play, and I honestly found it to be kind of boring. A lot of people like this game, but it's just not for me.
Card Fighters 2!
A sequel called Card Fighters 2 Expanded Edition came out only in Japan. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty much more of the same. The overworld now has an isometric view, and there are some new cards of course, which is the main draw for people who like this kind of game. There's really nothing in this one to change my opinion of the series.
Biomotor Unitron is an RPG, believe it or not. There's no epic saga or anything in the beginning, but instead you're using battle robots from an old war to enter and win tournaments and whatnot. You start out by picking your characters, and there's quite a few to choose from. Then you visit around town, which is done digital comic style, which is cool. But the absence of music during these scenes feels a little odd. Your goal is to become the ultimate Unitron master, but to do that, you need to build yourself up. You can choose to roam the world fighting random monsters to gain experience and money. These dungeons basically only exist for you to grind and find stuff, and you'll be doing a lot of it. You can also buy new parts and stuff like that as well. Then you have your teammate develop new parts for your Unitron, and this is all kind of weird. I've never really gotten into games where you need this to develop that and other similar things. It's just something that never really appealed to me. But anyway, you eventually get to fight in the arena, and you rise in rank if you defeat multiple enemies in a row. Then it's back to dungeon crawling. And every time someone says Unitron, I of course immediately think Unicron from Transformers the movie. Anyway, this is a decent if somewhat simple RPG. There's not a whole heck of a lot going on here, at least not for me, and I did get kind of bored fairly quickly. Facelli is a really interesting strategy game. First, you're greeted with an intro with a real song. Okay, it doesn't sound that great, but it's still cool that it's there. Anyway, this is one of the harder to find rarities on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, but not too hard because you can currently get a cart-only US version for around $65, and I'd say it's worth it. Anyway, you are at war and you're in charge of a mech. What's interesting is that you're allotted a number of blocks each time you move. So you use one of these blocks to advance forward one space and then another to simply turn to the right. There's other blocks you use to fire and use items and things like that as well. Now this sounds extremely tedious, but trust me, it's not. The combat isn't really turn-based and everything seems to do their moves all at once after you press OK. I find that this really helps keep the pace up, but it can also mean that your planned moves may backfire when an enemy walks out of the way from where you wanted to attack him. Now suddenly he's attacking you. Great move, dumbass! But seriously, the combat is interesting and I found it really fun. Between chapters you can buy new parts for your mech and even add new moves like slipping left or right so you don't have to waste 3 blocks doing one move. Why I have to buy these upgrades for my own base is beyond me. Don't you want to win too? Anyway, if you like strategy RPGs, be sure to check this one out and grab it if you can.
There's even a version of Pac-Man. I've never been a huge fan of Pac-Man. I'd much rather play Miss Pac-Man. Anyways, it's a decent port. They give you the option for a full or even a scrolling playfield. Personally, I like seeing where all the ghosts are, so I chose full. The sound quality isn't as good as the original arcade. What else is there to say? It's Pac-Man. Or how about Bust-A-Move Pocket? The object of this game is to line up the arrow and shoot the colored ball to match other colored balls. Get at least 3 touching and they break away. Clear the screen and you win that round. This is pretty fun, but my wife likes it more than I do. But she prefers Bust-A-Move on other systems since this one doesn't have a backlight and is pretty simple looking by comparison. And here's Puyo Pop by Sega. This is a really cool puzzle game where you match colored jelly blobs to make them disappear, just like in every other Puyo Puyo game, or Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine as it's known in the US. What's weird is that there are voices but no music during a match. The voices sound nice and clear, but if you turn them off in the option screen then you get some music. I much prefer this mode. This is a great game. And then there's Magical Drop Pocket. This one takes a bit of getting used to. Basically, you need to grab the colored balls with one button and release them with the other. If you connect 3 or more when you release, all of the same colors will disappear. Actually, it's not just the color that matters, but the design on the ball as well. This is all going on while the ceiling is closing down very fast. It's a very fast-paced game and at first it's easy to lose. But once you get the hang of it, it becomes really fun and crazy intense. I definitely recommend this one. Finally, we have Puzzle Link by Yume Kobo. This is an interesting one. Basically, you're creating links between same-colored jewels or objects or whatever they are. If you create a link between 2 groups of the same thing, they pop and the game keeps going. Pop the 2 C's and the stage is cleared. It's fun for a short while, I guess. There's also Puzzle Link 2. This is more of the same, but with card symbols instead. And of course, as the name implies, you can link up against another Neo Geo Pocket owner.
Big Bang Pro Wrestling is kind of cool. You can choose from 8 different wrestlers and each of them has their own unique entrance music. The graphics are detailed and animate nicely with cool cutaways here and there when something special happens. But I've never really been able to get the hang of controlling wrestling games, so I got bored quickly. But hey, if this looks good to you, try it out. And here's Cool Borders Pocket, which never made it to the US. This is a snowboarding game centered around avoiding obstacles and doing tricks. The problem is that the isometric view doesn't allow you to see very far ahead and you'll end up getting game overs really fast. I can see why it didn't come out over here, it's just not really very interesting. Now let's take a quick look at Evolution: Eternal Dungeons from Sega and ESP, based on the Dreamcast game of a similar name. This is another dungeon crawler RPG. Basically, it seems like you're on a quest to find valuable treasures and sell them to a museum. And of course, that means what else? Battling a lot of monsters. The town scenes are pretty cool, and they're presented in a digital comic style which is easy to navigate and looks great. The dungeons themselves don't look bad, but they're just dungeons, so what can I say? You'll find lots of items to help you out. The battles are not randomly generated, and you can avoid them if you're careful. But I found that these battles can get tedious just waiting to get a turn to do anything. The music is pretty nice, and it does add to the atmosphere. This game never came to the US, and it's pretty tough to find a UK version. There's even a port of Cotton, Fantastic Night Dreams on the system. This is a keep-em-up, and sorry if you hate that term, but it works. You're a witch on a broom shooting scary, Halloweenish things with your fairy friend. All in all, it's a pretty good port of the original game, though the sound of throwing a bomb is absolutely aggravating. But the control is good enough to get things done despite the screen being extremely cropped compared to the original. Basically, you collect jewels to power up your weapon and also obtain special one-time use weapons. These can defeat the bosses fairly quick. You can get this game for the TurboGrafx CD and also the Japanese PlayStation, but it's pretty cool to see Cotton on here. And of course, it never came to the US on this system. Alright, there's the Neo Geo Pocket Color for you. Dave, what'd you think of the system overall?
Overall, I thought it was great, and I wish it never died. I like the size of it. I thought it was very comfortable. I liked the micro switch joypad stick thingy, mabobber. I liked the games. I just miss it already.
Yeah.
What about you?
I like it a lot too. I mean, the sound probably could have been a little bit better.
Yeah.
Kind of Sega Master System-y, maybe a little bit better.
But that's a certain charm that,
I agree.
like.
And then the stupid sub battery, which often dies.
yeah.
And, if you don't have it or it's dead, you need the power lights blinking.
Yeah, and that's very annoying.
But other than those things, I think it was a really cool portable system. It was a lot more fun than you might think it was. And anyway, what do you guys think of the Neo Geo Pocket Color? Do you have any favorite games on it? Did we miss some? Let us know. And in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSec. Match of Millennium is awesome two-player.
Dude, I love this game.
Dude, I can't see.
Yeah, give me some cable.
I can't see.
Did you just throw a fireball? I can't see anything. Stop it! You're gonna rip. You just ripped the cable out. Now
This isn't gonna work.
No, we gotta think of something else.
This works. I can see. Can you?
Yeah, I can see, but you really smell.
I won! I won!
Yeah, you won, all right.
Hello and welcome to GameSack. This time around, we're taking a look at the mighty Commodore Amiga CD32.
Yeah, one of the first 32-bit CD systems released to the market.
Indeed.
So instead of just babbling, why don't you just tell us about it, Joe? Because there's a lot of people that probably don't know anything about it.
Okay. The Commodore Amiga CD32. The CD32 is a consoleized version of the Amiga computer system, most closely resembling the Amiga 1200 model. Released primarily in Europe, it was never officially sold in the US. However, NTSC versions of the console were sold in Canada. Also, most games are designed only with PAL consoles in mind. The controller is quite odd, but it's actually somewhat comfortable to hold. The D-pad is absolutely awful, however, and Commodore should feel very ashamed. Optional accessories like an Amiga mouse could be used in many games, and a video CD FMV cartridge could be added. With a keyboard and hard drive, you could even upgrade the console to a low-level Amiga 1200. The games were indeed on CD, some of them containing multiple games. The 32-bit system is powered by a Motorola 68 EC020 running at 14.3 MHz with 16.8 million colors, 2 MB of RAM, and 4 channels of sound straight from the Amiga line of computers. The CD32 could also run a lot of Amiga CD and Commodore CD-TV software. That's pretty cool. Due to Commodore's less than stellar finances and management, the Amiga CD32 lived a short life, selling over 100,000 units with around 180 compatible games released.
All right, Joe, thanks, man. That's some really good information there.
You're welcome.
And I've got to agree that the D-pad pretty much sucks on that thing, even though the controller is fairly comfortable.
Yeah.
But another complaint that I got is that the buttons have like hieroglyphs on them. I mean, why can't they just have normal naming conventions like A, B, C, D or something?
I guess you're just supposed to go by the color.
Okay, well, speaking of color, let's look at some of the games on here.
Let's do it.
This action platformer is Arabian Nights. It's one of the better titles that I got a chance to try out and feels like a really solid experience. Controlling Sinbad Jr. is easy, even though he does have a tendency to feel a bit slippery. But after a short time with the game, I got used to it. There's a small amount of traversing back and forth in each area, as you need to find keys and other items that'll help you reach the end of a level. I really like the graphics and artwork here, and there's even a few layers of parallax scrolling. My only complaint would be that this game feels and sounds more like a 16-bit game than a 32-bit game. I was hoping for some CD quality music, but what we have here is good enough and it's actually enjoyable. Playing this game, I don't see anything that can't be done on the Genesis or Super Nintendo. If you have 32-bit hardware at your disposal, you should put it to use. But again, even though it's not taking advantage of the hardware, it's still a fun title that I'd like to play again. Another platformer is Bubble and Squeak. This one started out really strong for me. It had some fun platforming and tons of jewels to collect. Plus it has a CD quality soundtrack that's very enjoyable. This was all great, and then I met up with that blue alien Squeak. You don't control him, but you give him commands of wait and come on. This was working well for a while, and I thought, well, this isn't so bad. Not long after that, actually the second level of the game, I got to a point where I kept telling Squeak to come on, but he wouldn't follow. Obviously, this platform is too high for him to jump to, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where to go or how to get him up there. I needed to get him up there because both players have to be at the end of the level to advance. After about 15 minutes, I just gave up. Obviously, there was something I was missing, but what was it? Still, if I did own an Amiga CD32, this would be one title that I would have in my collection. Here's Chaos Engine. This game was released in the US as Soldiers of Fortune. It's an overhead run and gun game. It's really strange because for some reason you can't play alone, as you need to have another player with you, be it a real person or just AI. Well, whatever, because the game is fun to play. As with most games of this genre, you just run around and shoot everything in your path, and you know what, I find nothing wrong with that. You can choose from 6 soldiers, all with different weapons and specials. There's 4 levels to each world in this game. The levels are medium in length, and there's lots of secret areas and puzzles to figure out as you make your way to the end. The graphics are okay, and there's some really nicely detailed artwork if you take the time to look. There's a fair amount of voice throughout the game, and it sounds pretty good.
Special power.
Hell, even the Genesis version sounds just as good in voice and music, which again makes me wonder why on a 32-bit system is this just 16-bit quality? It's just another missed opportunity, but it's still a fun game to play, and if you don't have an Amiga CD32, pick it up on the Genesis or SNES.
Layer C. Layer C.
Beneath a Steel Sky is a really cool point-and-click cyberpunk adventure game. This one seems to require the use of the Amiga mouse. You're Foster, and the story from what I can tell so far is that you've been shot down and your robot is broken. Also, your people have been all but wiped out, and now these guys are trying to capture you. Oh no! Using a fairly typical point-and-click interface, you go around to get clues to find out how to proceed to the next area. You can also choose which questions you want to ask in order to direct the flow of the conversation. It's all very, relaxing, and I like it quite a bit. There's no real rush to do anything, so you can take your time to see what works. Be careful though, because you can get killed if you're careless. You eventually fix your robot, and he's a complete smartass, but you're definitely going to need his help. You can choose to have voice only, text only, or both voice and text. It really slows down the game to have the voices on since it must load each and every sentence individually.
How come your elevator's not working?
The writing is nifty and it has some decent humor here and there. The graphics fit well and the music is great. I haven't gotten very far yet, but I do like this style of game for sure, and I would definitely recommend this to any CD32 owner as well as regular ass Amiga owners. It's also on DOS and other OSs. Hell, you can even get it for the iOS.
Can you distract that maintenance man?
What do you suggest? A song and dance routine?
This is Bump and Burn from Grand Slam. I guess they don't believe in title screens. Anyway, this is a cartoony racer that lends itself to the kart racing genre. You have a button for acceleration and nothing for brake that I could find. Oh well, who the hell needs brakes? When you drive over the stars that are on the ground, you pick up an item. You can then press a button to use these. Honestly, I didn't find any of them tremendously effective. There are a bunch of different tracks, and of course, they each have their own themes. Some of them can be pretty crazy, like the volcano stage with its cliffs and bridges that are really tough to stay on. You also pick up coins on the road that you can spend in the shop between races upgrading your vehicle. Unfortunately, the control isn't that great. It's a bit loose and not overly responsive. The graphics are 16-bit all the way, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. They could use some better color and more frames of animation on the objects though. The music's not bad, but certainly not memorable. In fact, this game is pretty much average all around. Top Gear 2 is an Amiga game that runs on the CD32. This is an average looking racer that's actually pretty fun. There's nothing amazingly special about it, but it does have something that makes you want to keep playing. This is also on the Super Nintendo and is pretty much the same, only with some nicer colors here and there and much better music. Not that the Super Nintendo was bad or anything. Overall, it's a pretty cool lap racer, if a bit bare bones.
No, this isn't Star Fox. Seriously, it's not. This game is called Guardian. It's obviously trying to capitalize on the awesomeness that is Star Fox, but it just fails hard. Okay, before I talk about this game, I gotta say that the designer obviously loves Star Wars. In the opening cinema, your paper airplane is obviously going after a TIE fighter. Then on the start screen, I'm pretty sure that's the Death Star in the background. Anyways, let's get back to this horrible game. As you start playing the first level, it looks almost identical to Star Fox right down to the mountains in the background. But there's a large difference in gameplay. In this one, you have free flight around a medium-sized level. Your object is kind of unknown as you keep fighting enemy ships. At some point, you'll do something that will let you pass the level. What the trigger is, I have no idea. You have 2 radar windows at the top of the screen, and God knows how to read them because I can't make heads or tails of either of them. The graphics are okay if you're playing on the Super Nintendo, but you're not. You're playing on a 32-bit system. Is this really all that the system is capable of doing? Sadly, this game just feels incomplete from the awkward controls to the less than average soundtrack. Buy Star Fox, you will have a much better experience. I was surprised to see Super Stardust on here. This, of course, is the prequel to Super Stardust HD on the PS3. I had no idea this game had any earlier incarnations. Anyway, this one plays exactly like Asteroids without the rotary dial. You press a button to thrust forward and left and right to rotate. Obviously, you can also fire. You collect little items, some of which are new weapons, but I can't figure out how to switch to the new weapons for the life of me. Also, each stage of a world looks exactly the same. Like Super Stardust HD, I got bored fairly quickly, but it was still neat to see here. At least the music and graphics are fairly good.
This is Overkill and Lunar Sea. That's right, 2 games on a single disc. Let's look at Overkill first. This one is a basic Defender clone. The screen scrolls forever in each direction since it loops. There are hostages to save as well. Everything moves so fast that it's really hard to keep from dying at first. You gotta be careful, and that's something that's really tough to do with the CD32 control pad. The graphics and parallax scrolling are really nice, but it sure could use some music. Alright, let's check out Lunar Sea. This is a poor man's side-scrolling shooter. You keep scrolling to the right and blowing stuff up. You do have a Gradius-style power-up system though. You also have a life bar. You can even restore your life bar with power-ups. So yeah, all that stuff is cool, but unfortunately there just isn't very much variety at all and there's no music. In my opinion, Overkill is the better of the 2 games on this disc. Deep Core starts out with a lot of promise. It has a decent opening sequence and some pumpin' music. Then you get to the game, which is kind of an action platformer. Basically, you're just making your way, collecting items, destroying enemies, and going through doors. You know, just run-of-the-mill stuff. This is one of the many CD32 games where pressing up jumps. Now, I understand that these are ancient computer games, but they really should have tweaked these to have a jump button on the CD32 version. Also, there's no music to liven things up. I think I would have liked this one a lot if I played it, say, back in the Apple IIe days, but even by the time the 8-bit consoles came around, this one would have seemed dated. And this one was released in 1993. Also, listen to the sound effects. I swear it's just some guy going pew, pew, pew! Anyway, let's move on. Gloom is a homebrew for the Amiga made to run on the CD32. As you can guess by the name, it's a Doom clone meant to show off the system's amazing 32-bit power. Unfortunately, the game takes up only a small portion of the screen and it seems to have a resolution of, I don't know, 3? You walk around shooting people for no reason and they all explode violently and scream as they remember their loved ones one final time as their heads go rolling. But the game does let you strafe using the shoulder buttons, so Dave would definitely like this one. I guess it's neat to finally see all the 32-bit power shine through in its full glory, but it's still weaker than a 32X or probably even a Super Effects chip.
Let's look at Roadkill, which is a violent top-down racer. If you've played Micro Machines or other similar games, you know how this one controls. Pick your racer in the beginning and off you go. During a race, you can collect items to help you destroy your opponent. Unfortunately, there's really not a lot of offensive weapons here. The racing action's alright. You'll be bouncing off a lot of walls until you memorize the track layout. You earn lots of cash during a race, which is tallied up after. I'm not sure what the money is good for since there seems to be no place to spend it that I've seen. I really like the graphics, I just wish there was more variety in the background between each stage. What music is here is good, but I wish there was some during the race. And why does this engine noise only come out of the left speaker? To top it all off, you have a limited number of continues, yet there's also a password feature. Not bad, but honestly, I'd rather play Micro Machines. Want some sweet 32-bit pinball? Why not try Pinball Illusions instead? Actually, it's not that bad. You get to select from 3 different boards to play on. Each is a fairly basic board, nothing insane really. You can switch resolutions at any time by pressing left or right. I prefer the one that gives me a close-up view as I think it just looks better. But maybe you like seeing more of the playfield at once. It's your call. The music is mostly streamed from the CD, though I swear I hear some Amiga mod music from time to time. It all sounds fairly good. There's an animated LED display at the top of the screen. The boards look decent as well, though nothing mind-blowing. The ball physics seem fairly good, but perhaps slightly bouncy. I found it hard to trap the ball on a flipper, it always seemed to have too much momentum. These same people made other pinball games for the system like Pinball Fantasies. They're mostly the same, and this one is the second in the series with Illusions being the third. But I like the Haunted Graveyard board in this one, and of course I just had to mention it. Overall, these are pretty fun to play.
Let's take a quick look at the Alien Breed games. First up is Tower Assault. This is an overhead free-roaming run and gun. You run around avoiding falling meteor fragments and shoot the occasional rat. But once you make your way inside one of the bases, you see that aliens are there and they've ripped everyone else to pieces. You wander around shooting the aliens and picking up more ammo as well as clues that are laying around. You have to trigger certain events in order to advance into the next area, so be sure to explore. The graphics and sound they're decent enough. Not a bad game, I say.
Jordan, warning. Energy low.
Alien Breed 2 is also on the same disc. This one starts you off not only with meteor fragments to avoid, but also helicopters. You can shoot them down, but good luck because it does not take long for you to die in this one. I couldn't seem to find my way out of level 1 as all the doors were locked. Oh well, I had more fun with part 1 anyway. And then there's Alien Breed 3D, which is an Amiga game which can run on the CD32. Kind of. Oh, this one has an elaborate anti-piracy scheme. It's too bad that this is the most exciting part of the game. So we finally get in and we have a nasty ass 3D view that's much worse than Gloom. We also have a frame rate of about -6. At first I couldn't figure out how to open the door here and get on with the game, but eventually aliens started attacking me. Trying to aim with the CD32 pad is a huge chore in itself. Looking at the option screen, I think this game would play much better if you hooked up a keyboard, but that won't fix the other issues. But come on, at least the music is excellent. Wow, Dave, there are a lot of European games on this thing. It's like there's only European games. What the hell, Dave? What the hell?
You know, that's a darn good question. You figure a European console would have more than just European games on it, but I guess not. So anyways, what do you think so far?
I think we need to look at some more of the games.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea to take a look at a few more to get a better opinion.
Zool might be one of the better European platformers out there. Might be. According to the opening FMV, which CD32 games don't often have by the way, you crash land on a planet and you begin your invasion. You're Zool and you're a ninja who runs around and collects things, as all ninjas tend to do. You can also climb walls, shoot a gun, and use a close range attack. There's lots of items to collect, lots and lots of items, so you better grab them all. You won't be able to exit a level until you have 99% of them. And that's weird because there's still tons of stuff around once your meter hits 99%. The items are based on the level. So in the first world you collect candy things, and in the second world you collect CDs and tapes and stuff like that. Now, why Zool needs all this stuff I will never know. And why the hell is the first level some random ass Candyland area? This level was always shown in reviews and ads of this game for other platforms, and it's not a good looking level to show off. At the end of the fourth area of each world, you come to a boss fight. But be careful, because even if you defeat the boss, you still might die trying to reach the exit. Honestly, I feel like the game moves too fast for its own good, and everything feels really slippery. I also think that the level design and enemy placement are both painfully bad, and the enemies regenerate almost immediately once you kill them. It's like the designers never played Mario, or even Sonic for that matter, to figure out how tight play mechanics and level design make for a more enjoyable game. But at least there's some cool parallax scrolling, I guess. Let's not forget that this is a 32-bit system. The music is also pretty good, and it's streamed off of the CD. I feel that if I didn't grow up with much better games, I'd probably be able to appreciate Zool more than I do. Anyway, let's take a look at Zool 2. This one lets you play as Zool or Zoolette, I don't know. The basic gameplay is pretty much the same, but Zool climbs and jumps off walls differently now. Once you get to the top of an incline, you need to press backwards on the D-pad to jump off and then quickly press the other direction to get on top of the surface. Very weird. The level design and enemy placement are still chaotic at best, but at least the graphics are a little better. Hell, even the music is a little better. All in all, I'd rather play Zool 2 here, but I really don't want to play either. But if you do, you can also get this one on lots of other platforms like the Game Boy, Genesis, and Super Nintendo. Unless you want to play Zool 2, then it's either this, the Amiga proper, the PC, or the Jaguar, or as the British say, Jaguar.
here's Simon the Sorcerer. This one features a full talkie soundtrack. Oh boy! So you're an English lad who accidentally gets stuck in a world of Wizards and Warcraft. Or Wizards and Warriors, I don't know. You've got to find and deal with the evil sorted, but before you can do this, you must become a wizard yourself. As you can see, it's a point-and-click adventure. I generally like these, and this one has its charms, though I haven't gotten very far yet. The main issue with it is that it's incredibly slow. Also, all of the spoken dialogue comes out only on the left speaker.
What's the square root of 1369?
37.
Joe says that this is a flaw of the original Amiga sound chip design. Everything is usually hard panned left or right, but personally I think he just doesn't have his right channel plugged in. You can tell that this was a ported Amiga game, and there's lots of these on this console. Still, if you have the time, I recommend it because it has a good sense of humor and it's decently enjoyable.
When I move my mouse pointer over you, it says Wizards. Oh, fair enough, I suppose. Disguise is off, lads. What did you want to speak to us about anyway?
If you want awesome platforming, then look elsewhere, cause this is Super Frog. So you're chillin' with your hottie when a jealous witch kidnaps your squeeze and turns you into a frog. I guess she was jealous of you getting between her and your hot blonde. But then you drink a strange bottle of liquid that was floating down the stream, which is always recommended. Now you're Super Frog and off you go to save the day. And your woman too. Here we have an extremely basic platformer. Unfortunately, the up button jumps, and if you're using the CD32 controller, you'll notice that the D-pad is crooked. This will often cause you to accidentally jump when you press right. It takes a while to get used to. There's lots and lots of items for you to collect as per usual with platformers on this system, but you need to collect a certain amount of coins here before you can complete the level. Everything has that European platformer feel, and back then I've got to say that they certainly were not pros of the genre. The control is kinda tough and not exactly fluid. The graphics look less than 16-bit, and the level design can be weird at times. The music is bouncy, but you won't be begging for a sound test. This game is okay, but I doubt it sold a lot of CD32s or Amigas. The Amiga version of Battletoads is playable here on the CD32. It has a cool intro with some nicely enhanced music. Unfortunately, that's where the goodness ends. First of all, you can only choose music or sound effects, not both thanks to the Amiga's very limited sound chip. I'll go with the music. Secondly, the game seems to use only one button. It's a damn chore to punch, and I'm still not quite sure how I'm doing it when I do it. The graphics don't look any better than the NES, really. The screen is a lot smaller. I made it all the way up to the third enemy in the game.
Here's Skeleton Crew by Core. Core is really good, so this should be good. Oh, it's by Early Core. Anyway, it still shows promise. It's an isometric run and gun for lack of better description. You can shoot, jump, and switch between weapons. Unfortunately, the control is weird as hell. You have two buttons that shoot. Holding either one causes your guy to begin rotating. The left shot button causes him to rotate right, and vice versa with the right shot button, completely backwards of what you'd expect. Holding both shot buttons simultaneously actually allows you to shoot straight. So, needless to say, you'll be spending most of your time holding both shot buttons. If it weren't for the bizarre controls, this could actually be a pretty decent game. I mean, I love the atmosphere and the music. It can be kinda tough to hit your enemies, and they're definitely bullet sponges, so the game could use a bit of refinement in that area as well. And you never get any weapon upgrades. All the stuff you collect just goes towards earning an extra dude, eventually. You can also get this one on the Genesis, and that one has an extra level. Liberation is another game that starts out with big ambitions. It has a really cool intro, and they obviously spent a lot of time and effort on it. You're in kind of a cyberpunk future, and you need to figure out what's going on, and I don't know, the story didn't really capture my interest. And honestly, neither did the game. You wander around in a first-person perspective, which is really cool for like the first 20 or 30 seconds. Each button shoots a different gun. You can also zoom in on objects and access them. I think I must have turned off a light switch because now everything's completely black. I can't see what I'm doing, how to get out of the room, or even how to turn the lights back on. I have no choice, I have to reset the game. Mainly, I just wandered around trying to shoot things with very little success. Sometimes things attacked me and I was clearly receiving damage. This game bored me to tears, and I can't in good faith tell you whether the game is good or bad since I really didn't play much of it. Anyway, let's check out James Pond 2 Robocod. I don't remember liking the Genesis games very much, so I didn't have high hopes for this one. But actually, I ended up liking it more than I thought I would. In this one, James is part robot for whatever reason, and he can extend himself as high as the screen will let him. He can then grab onto the bottom of ledges and whatnot, and then scuttle himself back and forth. The graphics are really colorful, and there's some cool parallax scrolling, but the control feels a bit floaty and the collision detection seems kinda wonky. There's also some blind jumps since the screen area doesn't extend down as far as it should. In fact, I've noticed that quite a few CD32 games take up very little screen real estate, but it's still enough to work with and eventually get past. And since we're playing so many games in this episode, I didn't have a ton of time to put into this one, but I feel that it's pretty good despite its flaws. The level design is actually fairly well done. I wish the visual design was better though. I think it could benefit from more structured visuals instead of just random things lying around like volleyballs and simple backgrounds like a star pattern. I mean, how uninspired can you get? This game is on a ton of different platforms, and I'd recommend that you go with the Genesis or maybe even the Super Nintendo version instead. It's just too bad that they don't have the cool CD music that this one does. James Pond 3 Operation Starfish is also playable on here. You can tell this one came out after Sonic because it tries to be fast and hip. Unfortunately, it's extremely twitchy and much too fast for its own good. I liked being able to use different objects and whatnot, but overall I just wasn't feeling it. I'd rather play part 2.
Here's the amazing Heimdall 2. This is an isometric adventure game where you play as Heimdall. You must travel to different lands and collect pieces of the sacred amulet to stop Loki. As the game came to life on my screen, I was thinking how cool this looked. I really like the cartoony artwork here. Heimdall isn't the only playable character in the game. You can also choose a woman named Ursha. Both of these characters are clunky to control, but after a while I think it's something one could get used to. But one thing that I think would be hard to get used to is the inventory screen. Here you can equip weapons, use items, manage your spells, and more. There's lots of icons here, and learning all of them will take some time, so you'll have to be very patient. The game in general moves really slow. Even the battles seem to take forever, and I'm not even sure if I'm getting close to killing this orc. He sure is giving me a pounding though. After playing this game for a while, I've decided that it's nothing that I really care to continue playing. If you like this game, great. I'm really happy for you, but as for me, I'll pass. Pierre Le Chef is Out to Lunch is a pretty cool game. Pierre is a chef and his food is all escaped. Oh no! What to do? Well, it's lunchtime and the customers are waiting, so you need to go out and catch the food, all of which is still alive, even the cheese and meatballs. The first thing you gotta do is locate and acquire your net. This allows you to grab the food as it wanders around. You can also collect what I'm assuming is pepper to toss at your food, which will stun it, kinda like Burger Time. So you go around outside capturing food and then you gotta bring it back to the cage. Once you collect enough food, the doorway opens to the next level. I feel kind of bad for the customers who are going to have to eat this dirty-ass food though. Oh well, what they don't know won't hurt them. The platforming is okay, but slightly slippery. And there's ice, which is even more slippery. The platforming gets tough pretty fast. How the hell do I make this jump? It's infuriating! Oh yeah, there's also a timer, and once you die, it's game over. This is a fun game, but I wish the platforming aspects were better. You can also get it on the Game Boy and Super Nintendo, but keep in mind that this version is 32-bit. Here we have the naughty ones. This is a single-screen platformer where you must find the key and reach the exit. Each level is loaded with enemies and obstacles, and it only takes one hit to kill your character. This means that you just can't run willy-nilly through the place and expect to find the exit with no problem. As you're going around, there's lots of stuff you can pick up for points, and enemies will also drop coins for you to collect. Luckily, you have a bouncy ball for a weapon. You can play with a friend, but both of these extremely naughty boys look almost identical in their naughtiness, so it's easy to get confused. It's a decent game that you could easily spend a good chunk of your time trying to see what comes next.
Disposable Hero is a horizontal shooter. You fire a rapid shot and there seems to be no way to obtain any other weapons or power up the shot despite a few different icons that you collect. Sometimes it's very difficult to position yourself and shoot down enemy guns, so it's best just to avoid them. I also find it weird that your weapon makes no sound at all when it fires. The music though is pretty good, and I like some of the graphical touches like the reflection in the water here. But overall though, the game is aptly named. It's very disposable. Banshee by Core is by far the best shooter on the system in my opinion. It plays kind of like the 1940 games from Capcom, only it's much more interesting. You fly around and you have a life bar. Sometimes icons will appear which can grant you power-ups, points, or restore your health among other things. What I really love is the vast amount of detail in the levels. There are tons of troops on the ground who think they can take you out with their little guns, and it's really fun shooting these guys. Usually they splat, but sometimes they catch on fire and run around if you destroy nearby equipment. It's so fun! Even skeletons will crawl out of their grave and try to shoot you down. Suffice it to say that your presence is not desired here. But the story behind this game is even better. It's 1999, but there are no microwave ovens and the TV is still in black and white. Therefore, it's only reasonable that the Styx Empire invades Earth. Your dad was eventually murdered by them for refusing to invent the microwave oven. That's right, they killed him because he did not invent the microwave oven. Now you're on a mission to avenge your dad and bring the Styx Empire down. You know, any game that has a story like that doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's good. The levels are super long, there's no music whatsoever, but not once did I feel bored like I usually do when I play overhead shooters. There's just so much going on, and I found that I had a smile on my dumb face for pretty much the entire time I was playing it. This is definitely a great game, and you can only get it on here and the regular-ass Amiga. Fightin' Spirit is one of the few fighting games on the system as far as I can tell. In this one you get to choose from 10 different characters, each with their own fightin' spirit. Of course, you can pretty much forget about doing lots of sweet special moves using the CD32 controller. I was able to pull off one or two maybe, but I mainly just spammed my hard kick because that was a lot easier. This one is clearly inspired by super early Neo Geo fighting games. Almost everything reminds me of the Neo Geo. The artwork, the voices, the font, the intros, even the loading screen. The graphics are pretty good, except everyone's skin is way too orange. You guys gonna get cancer! Also, all of the stages only have a single layer of scrolling. The music, while streamed off of the CD, is only fair at best. It's nice to see an ambitious fighting game on here, but I just don't think the system was really meant for this.
Round 3. Fight.
And there you go, that's the Commodore Amiga CD32. Dave, what'd you think?
You know, I didn't mind the system. I would have liked to have actually seen what it's capable of. Out of the games that I played, I felt they're mainly just ports of 16-bit games. That's what it felt like, with probably some of them had enhanced soundtracks, but other than that, they just didn't feel like anything that screamed 32-bit to me.
Oh no,
how about you?
I agree. The games are hit and miss. I think we had a lot better games on the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, the Saturn, the PlayStation during that time, and even the 3DO.
Yeah, and we got a lot of those games that were on the Amiga CD32 to the Genesis. There was a lot of games from there on there.
Yeah, and so I think, it's kind of an interesting console, but I wouldn't go out of my way for it. Anyway, what do you guys think of the system? Let us know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
What's up, Joe?
Oh, hi Dave! I'm enjoying the D-pad of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System controller. It's a very comfortable D-pad that allows precise control over your virtual character.
What the hell is this, Joe? When your input is so unhindered, where's the challenge? Why waste time on this wimpy 16-bit machine? What do you want this time, Joe? You want to show me another underpowered system that I don't even have to put any effort into controlling?
Well, not this time, Dave. Now I've got the Commodore Amiga CD32.
Now this is more like it. With the 32-bit Amiga CD32 system's D-pad, you can tell that the challenging physical experience is every bit as important as the audio-visual experience. It's no wonder that so many European platformers were specifically designed to use the D-pad to jump when this D-pad is this challenging. And the Amiga CD32 itself is an amazing console, fully realizing the potential of 32 bits and placing the customer in an advanced state of hyper-reality. The CD32 wasn't even released in the US because it was too far advanced for the primitive society of the time, and it still is today. Joe, you are a great friend, and I'd like to give you $32, one for each amazing bit of the Amiga CD32.
There's only $4 here, actually. Hello and welcome to GameSack. We are talking about the Game Boy.
This is going to be one amazing episode, and as we do with system episodes, let's just hand it right over to Joe to explain all about the system.
A little about it. Anyway, here's some stuff about the Game Boy.
Just enough.
The Nintendo Game Boy. The Game Boy was launched in 1989 to critical and public acclaim and came packaged with Tetris for $89. The system was Nintendo's first portable to use interchangeable cartridges. It featured similar controls to the popular NES and a black and white screen 2.6 inches in size with a resolution of 160 by 144. The Game Boy was a runaway smash hit and saw many game releases as well as revisions to the hardware itself. The system ran on an 8-bit CPU running at 4.19 MHz, could put 40 sprites on screen, and featured 4-channel stereo sound. Game Boy games could also be played in peripherals like the Super Game Boy for the Super NES or the Game Boy Player for the GameCube. The original Super Game Boy, the one that was released in the US, plays games at the wrong speed, however. But the Game Boy Player and the Super Game Boy 2, which was released in Japan, both fixed the issue. The system was in the spotlight for over 8 years before being succeeded by the Game Boy Color. And that is pretty impressive.
Wow, Joe, that was really interesting. 4 whole channels of sound on that thing?
Amazing.
Amazing.
One less than the NES, in fact.
It's a good quality video like usual, but I'm a bit surprised that you actually didn't take the system apart and show the innards like you do with other systems.
Well, that's because I don't have a tri-wing security bit, I guess they call it.
Well, they call it Triforce bit.
Yeah, stupid Nintendo. And I didn't want to break your Game Boy.
Well, I do appreciate that. That's very kind of you, but
Yeah.
Also kudos for using the Game Boy camera. That was cool.
Anyway, let's just get right on into the Game Boy games themselves. You've got the first one? Let's go.
Burai Fighter Deluxe is a shooter by Taxan. This is a port of Burai Fighter on the NES. This one's called Deluxe because it's in black and white. Just like any shooter out there, your goal is to make it through each stage and fight a boss. The stages are interesting because you'll get to a certain point and then the level will start scrolling backwards and you retrace part of the level and then it will start going forward again. Why it does this I have no idea, but I'm guessing it's to lengthen the game overall. You start out with a basic weapon that can shoot in 8 directions. You have auto fire and you can hold your shot in whatever direction you want it to go. It works pretty well for the most part. Along the way you can grab power-ups that will give your gun different abilities like a ring, laser, and missile shot. These are great, and if you power them up enough they'll shoot both in front and behind you. One glaring flaw that I've found with this game is that when you fight bosses, you just explode for no reason. It's happened several times and I can't figure out what's going on. Other than that, this is a fun game with a decent soundtrack. Bionic Commando was also ported to the Game Boy. It's basically the same game as its NES counterpart, but with a slightly modified story and sci-fi setting. This has always been a fun game for me, but it's just strange to control. You play as Rad Spencer, and for some reason he can't jump. It's a very strange feeling playing an action platformer where your character can't jump. You basically use your bionic arm to get you up on platforms and to help you swing to other ledges. You also have a gun that is necessary to kill the bad guys. Lots of action, good graphics, and a great soundtrack make this a good port. Even though I really struggle with the control scheme, I have a great time. Both of the DuckTales games from the NES got a port to the Game Boy. Let's take a look at DuckTales 2. This is a solid port for this system and just as hard as can be. Again, you play as Scrooge McDuck, out trying to find pieces of a map and collecting a lot of treasure along the way. The game is non-linear and you can pick which area you want to tackle first. Throughout each level, you'll find lots of hidden treasure and items. You'll also meet with a lot of your family who will give you hints and information. It's a solid platformer and Scrooge's cane comes in handy. I really like the pogo mechanic and use it all the time. There's other things you can do with the cane like fire cannons or work conveyor belts. With great music and really good graphics, this is one you must have in your collection.
Dave's talked about the Castlevania adventure before, and now it's my turn. This was a launch title, and I was already a fan of regular-ass Castlevania at the time. But this one is different. The first thing you're going to notice is that it's slow as molasses. I wish they asked Nintendo for a little advice while they were making this. Anyway, now you have ropes instead of stairs and a hitbox that seems larger than your character. The hearts actually refill your life, which is very unusual for a Castlevania game, but it makes sense since there aren't any sub-weapons. Oh, and the game is pretty damn tough. Still, there's something really fun about it, even being as frustrating as it is. What keeps me going mainly is the music. It's incredible and it makes great use of this newfangled stereo nonsense that the Game Boy was capable of. This game is definitely worth having. This was followed up with Castlevania II Belmont's Revenge. This one plays at a speed that the original should have, and it's actually very refreshing as a result. The sub-weapons are back, and that is also welcome, and hearts once again act as they do in the rest of the series. You get a stage select right off the bat this time, which is yet another welcome feature. Oh, and the graphics are a bit more detailed and the music's even better if you can believe that. But the main problem with this game is the level design. They went way overboard with the ropes. I mean, they really like the ropes. It almost feels like you spend more time climbing up or sliding down than you do walking left or right. Is there some technical reason why they couldn't do stairs on the Game Boy versions? Again, the music is what keeps me going here, and it is a good game, better than the first, but not as good as the NES games. After that, we were blessed with Castlevania Legends. I honestly don't care much for this one. You're just some chick trying to bring peace to Transylvania, that's all the game tells you from the start. The control is okay, and you do move fairly swiftly. There's still ropes here, but they're not spammed all over the place like they were in Ropavania 2. Some candles will warp you into a room where you have to fight mummies, or are they mudmen? I can't tell, and I don't really like this feature at all. The graphics have been scaled back a bit, and even the music is now in mono. Okay, we're almost done with the Castlevania stuff, but we gotta take a quick look at Kid Dracula. In this one, you play as Dracula when he was a little kid. He may be evil, but just look how cute he is. This is probably the best playing Castlevania-related game on the system, honestly. Yeah, it's geared towards a younger audience, but it's just so fun and playable. Anyway, Kid Dracula fires projectiles and he can even shoot up. He can also transform into a bat right at the beginning of the game. But as you advance, you'll gain more powers to help you, like 3 small bats that attack in a circle. The controls are excellent, and if you die, it's always going to be your fault and something that you can learn from. The graphics have a cartoony look which depict how truly evil Dracula really is. So does the music, which is bouncy and happy, but it's still good. Let me remind you that this is the very character who will in the future beg the question, "What is a man?" He also has many gruesome deaths that he can look forward to. But this game lets you live his life in happier times. For sure, pick it up.
Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening was a huge game for the Game Boy, and it was huge for me too. You still play as Link in the game, but you're not in Hyrule, and you're not after pieces of the Triforce or trying to rescue Princess Zelda. Instead, you're on an island trying to find 8 music instruments to wake up the windfish. This entry is everything you'd expect for a Zelda game, and that's awesomeness. It features a large overworld map, 8 dungeons to explore, and many secrets to be found. The graphics are great, and Link controls really well. The music is also top-notch with some old melodies you will know, and also a bunch of new tunes that are perfectly enjoyable. I spent tons of time playing this game throughout the years, and it still holds up as one of the best titles in the series. If you haven't played this title, then you're definitely missing out. Here's Pokemon Red. I'll be honest and say that I'm not a huge fan of the series. In my entire life, I've probably caught less than 20 Pokemon total. However, while I was playing, I could see the attraction of taking your Pokemon and using them in battle trying to catch other Pokemon. Even battling other trainers was entertaining. It feels like a typical RPG with random battles and how your Pokemon level up. I imagine to actually catch all the Pokemon and level them up, it would take years. I do like that you can switch between your Pokemon in battles, and this will help all of them level up simultaneously. It really isn't a bad game, and maybe it's something that I should try again if I ever find the time. The Sword of Hope is a first-person RPG by Kemco. I bought this game way back when because it reminded me a lot of Shadowgate, and I really liked that game at the time. And it plays very similar to that. Your play screen is menu-driven, and all the commands are self-explanatory. Be sure to look at everything, as you might find items on the ground, or people might give you hints if you look at them more than once. Your field of view is tiny, and if you're playing on the Game Boy, it's even more minuscule, so I hope you have some really good vision. This is one game that you'll want to use graph paper to make a map. If you don't, you will get lost. The developers must have figured this out, so they gave you a magic spell that takes you back to the old man's house. The game has a good story, and the music is unmistakably Kemco style, and I like that. The only real downfall of this game is that you get caught in way too many battles, and there are times when you'll have 4 or 5 in a row. Still, this is actually a fun game if you're up for this style of RPG.
Donkey Kong showed up on the Game Boy. Many games have their own border image and in-game palettes if you play them on the Super Game Boy, and Donkey Kong here was the very first to do so. You start out by playing what appears to be a simple port of the arcade game. And it is. You've got 4 levels to rescue Paulina. Donkey Kong himself has been updated to be wearing his tie. Such a classy guy. They even employed the Super Nintendo sound chip complete with mild reverb for Paulina's screams. Anyway, after you get past these 4 levels, you expect to go back to level 1. Well, you do go to level 1, but now it's level 1 of the new game. They've added a lot more stuff here, and it's pretty cool. Donkey Kong keeps taking your woman behind locked doors. And since he's a complete dumbass, he leaves the key to the door somewhere in the level. You need to maneuver to the key and pick it up Mario 2 style and take it to the locked door. Then you go on to the next level. The game even has save spots, and it's all really well put together. This is a really nice package, and I recommend it to everybody, especially Donkey Kong fans. Things moved forward with Donkey Kong Land, which was an interpretation of Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. Check it out, Silicon graphics on Game Boy. See? Any system really can do these kinds of graphics. This is also another game that displays its own border and color palette when it's played on the Super Game Boy. Anyway, this one plays pretty much exactly like Donkey Kong Country with its own unique stages, mostly unique anyway. Except this time you don't see Diddy Kong on the screen at the same time as you. If you take a hit, you go away and Diddy comes in to take over. If you find another barrel and free Donkey Kong, then the same thing will happen but in reverse if you take another hit. It works fairly well and it's a nice compromise to get it to fit on the Game Boy. The control itself feels good, but the game does have some issues. First and foremost, a lack of color really makes it hard to distinguish the enemies and other hazards since everything has that same grainy silicon graphics look to it. And secondly, it can sometimes be hard to do what you want to do. Like here, I just want to bounce on this lizard enemy, but I keep grabbing the ropes every time I jump. There's no room to jump anywhere but in front of the ropes. Also, since the screen is so zoomed in, you never know if there's a platform you can land on below you or not. Otherwise, this game is pretty good with some nice music. Then came Donkey Kong Land 2. This one improves on a few things for sure. First and foremost, the enemies are now much easier to make out against the background. The control also seems much smoother and even more responsive. This one plays like Donkey Kong Country 2 with Diddy and Dixie in the lead. This also has its own Super Game Boy background as well, and most stages have their own set of colors. In fact, when you first start the game, you might even think it's a Game Boy Color game, but it's not. Definitely check this one out, I think it's the best of the bunch.
Tetris on the Game Boy is a great port of the Puzzler. This is the version that I've spent most of the time with since it came with my system. It has a perfect gameplay and a soundtrack that is amazing. I've spent many hours playing and trying to get as many lines as possible. To me, it was all about how many lines I could get and not the score. Then I played B mode just looking for a great challenge. Oh, I found a challenge alright, and I'd played this with the stats turned all the way up. It was fun and very frustrating because I'd play and lose and lose and lose, but I'd never give up. Then all of a sudden I got a great setup and the blocks fell like they should and I cleared all 25 lines. I was treated to a really cool ending with all the Russian dancers and then the space shuttle launched. It was a very sweet moment. Another very addictive puzzler by Nintendo is of course Dr. Mario. I never played a lot of this game back in the day as it just wasn't as appealing as Tetris. But as time went by I played more and more and I eventually became addicted. The concept is very simple and all you have to do is eliminate viruses by matching them with the drugs that Mario is throwing in the jar. It's easy and fun, but it gets super hard in the upper levels. To top it all off, you get a soundtrack with 2 great songs that are very memorable. Solomon's Club, published by Tecmo, is another fun puzzle game. This one's more action-oriented as you control a wizard named Dana. Dana must get the key in each area and open the door to exit onto the next level. You can make blocks to help you build steps to get to where you need to go. You can also break blocks that are in your way. Breaking a block with an enemy on it will make them fall to their death. There's lots of things to collect besides the key, which will give you points, extra lives, and more. The music is pretty good, and the game plays great on the Game Boy. If you're into puzzlers like this, I'd recommend it.
Wow, that's a lot of black and whiteness so far.
Hey, it's easy on the eyes, look at it that way.
Not when they're zoomed up all the way to the full screen.
I don't know, I love it. I love it. You knew I'd love this whole episode, and we're only part of the way through it.
So let's just get right back into it. Balloon Kid is a follow-up to Balloon Fight, which was on the NES. This one plays more like the balloon trip part of that game. In the beginning of the game, you ship your son off on a set of balloons, hoping to make the news and maybe even land a reality TV show. Kinda like Balloon Boy. Anyone remember Balloon Boy? Oh well. Anyway, you realize your mistake and you take off in your own set of balloons to go get your son. And on the way, you want to collect as many balloons as possible. Well, actually, you don't have to, but they're worth points and you want lots of points. You tap button A for a burst of height, but you can also land on the ground just as long as it's not covered with danger. Pressing B will cause you to let go from your balloons. If your balloons touch an enemy, one of them will pop. You can still run around on the ground if you don't have any balloons. This is a pretty fun game for the Game Boy, but honestly, only in short bursts. Now let's take a look at Kid Icarus of Myth and Monsters. Full disclosure, I don't know a whole lot about the original game as the only things that appealed to me at the time were the fact that you could shoot up and the music. This version seems to play in a very similar fashion, only the music isn't anywhere near as catchy. You can shoot across or up, and hearts are still your currency. Speaking of which, the stores here are damned expensive. 20 entire hearts for a hammer? These are given away multiple times in any level. There's lots of different rooms you can go into, and some of them have advice for you, or maybe even some creatures to fight. Your goal in most of the levels is to make it to the top of the stage and into the exit, but the labyrinths are also back. Don't worry though, as you have a completely useless map at your disposal. You can break certain blocks with your hammer, and these usually reveal special stuff to collect. The control is decent, though the game feels very slow and floaty. It's a decent game, but it's certainly nothing I'd personally pay more than $5 for. Trax is a fun and unique game developed by HAL Laboratories and released by Electrobrain. In this one, you go on a cute killing spree, destroying everything that you see to satiate your lust for death and destruction. The good people are just trying to defend themselves, and of course they try to stop you. Basically, button B fires your gun and button A rotates your turret of death. But it can only rotate clockwise, so be careful. You shoot down enemy vehicles, trees, homes, warehouses, you name it. No amount of death is too much for you and your cute little tank. You can pick up some cool power-ups to help you out with your murder spree, including a 3-way shot and other things. It's up to you to decide if your current weapon is better at death than the one you can pick up. Your life bar is over on the right. If that runs out, you lose your life. I'm sure you would have never have guessed that, right? Anyway, if you pick up fuel tanks, they restore some of your life bar, so maybe it's a fuel gauge. The stages are pretty long, and there's mid-bosses as well as stage bosses to murder. There can be a lot of slowdown when a lot of innocent defenders crowd the screen. And crowd it they do. It can be really challenging sometimes if you want to kill everybody. The music works for the game, and it seems kind of happy for a wartime game. But then again, you're a happy little tank. Overall, it's really not bad at all, and I recommend it if you can find it for a few bucks.
Revenge of the Gator is a pinball game by HAL. It's a fun game, but it has one flaw that can be frustrating, which I'll get to soon. The game controls well, flippers are responsive, and the ball physics are fairly realistic. There's only one game board here with 4 screens. Each screen has plenty of stuff that you can try and hit with your ball. In fact, sometimes it feels that there's too much on the screen and you feel cramped. Moving the ball up the board takes some practice and a lot of luck. This is where I feel the main flaw is. Like here, I've worked my ass off to get this gate open so I can move up the board. Once I get up to the next area, it doesn't take me long to mess up and get knocked back down a screen. Instead of the gate remaining open, it's closed! What the hell? No! This gate should always be open after you've opened it once. I don't know if it's by design or an overlooked flaw, but it sure is frustrating. Otherwise, the game is fun, has decent graphics, secret rooms, and a looping track that gets annoying kinda quickly. After this, HAL went on to make Kirby's Pinball Land. I feel they went all out with this one and almost perfected video pinball here. This game has 3 different fields to choose from. All of them are really well designed and have tons of animation. Again, each board has 4 screens, and the only thing that I wish was there was smooth scrolling between each screen. When your ball flops between 2 screens, it can get quite disorienting. The playfields seem to have more room and aren't as claustrophobic. There's a few bonus rooms on each board and also a boss fight waiting for you at the top. These are tough, but they're really fun. The music is pure Kirby awesomeness, and I never get sick of it. What a great game this is, and if I were you, I'd buy it for your 3DS from the eShop. Since we're talking about HAL here, let's take a look at their other Kirby games. I mean, why the hell not? Kirby's Dream Land was released in 1992. This was his first adventure game, and it's a very solid experience. I had a really fun time playing this game back in the day, and I was a Kirby fan ever since. There's only 2 problems that this game has. Firstly, Kirby hasn't gained his ability to steal enemy powers. For me, this isn't a big deal since this is how I knew the game originally. People that are used to current Kirby games and go back and try this one most likely won't like it. Secondly, the game is over before you know it. You can beat it in less than 45 minutes. Still though, it's a great experience. Kirby's Dream Land 2 came out several years later. This game does let you steal enemy powers, which of course is awesome. It also has helper characters in the form of animals. These are okay, I'm just not a big fan of them. I'd much rather just have Kirby alone and that's it. This entry is definitely longer than the first and actually has 7 worlds with between 3 to 5 levels each and a boss fight. This is a much more fleshed out game than the first and it feels like it. The control is great and of course the music is fantastic. HAL is one amazing company and I'm glad that Nintendo has them on their side.
Let's check out Operation C from Konami. This is basically a retooling of Super C on the NES. This was released back when they were afraid to call Contra Contra. Anyway, I feel that this one was more successful than the Castlevania Game Boy games in actually bringing the player a portable version of the game. Playing this, it absolutely feels like a Contra game through and through, and that's because it is. Almost everything you know and love about Contra is here. You've got side-scrolling run-and-gun action, but this time the weapons can be powered up. So you can get a spread that features twice as many bullets. Or you can get a heat-seeking version of the same weapon. I like these additions and it really makes the game more enjoyable. Of course, you have the overhead missions as well. Some people hate these stages. Personally, I like them. The graphics are fantastic for the Game Boy and the music is straight from Super C, only better now because it's in stereo. By default, you only get 3 continues, but I'm sure there's a code out there to help you if you really need it. This one is a must-have. There's also Contra the Alien Wars, which was made by Factor 5. This, of course, is a direct port of Contra 3 on the Super Nintendo. I'm surprised at how well it came out, actually. It's pretty damn faithful, all things considered. Gone, however, is the ability to wield 2 weapons at a single time and also the 2-player mode, which of course is to be expected. Still, pretty much everything is here, just scaled way back. The overhead levels are here, but of course they don't rotate. I recall most people hating those levels in the Super Nintendo version with a flaming passion. Again, I actually like them, though they're a lot slower and a bit tougher here. The graphics are all pretty good and the control is decent. The music is also pretty faithful and it's fun to hear Game Boy renditions of the original tunes. This is a good game, but I think that Operation C is the better Contra experience overall for the Game Boy. We should probably mention a few games that everyone else talks about, like Super Mario Land. Yeah, Dave's talked about these before, but here's my brief take. Of course, this was one of the launch games. I remember thinking how tiny everything looked and how extremely simple the graphics were. Honestly, it really turned me off as a potential customer for the Game Boy. Back then, I wanted games to take a step forward, not backwards. Anyway, I never really bothered to play this one until a few years ago. It's actually a pretty good game and definitely a unique one in the Mario universe. Yeah, the graphics pretty much suck, but the music is outstanding. What is it with Game Boy launch titles having such amazing music? Can someone tell me? Anyway, it plays pretty well, but it's kinda slippery as Mario games tend to be. Now, I generally like Mario games more or less, but as a character, I pretty much despise him. I know, opinions like that are simply not allowed. Still, it's a good game with some slight nods to the original NES version. Hell, I'll tell you what, I'd rather play this than the original. Two years later, Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins came around. The graphics are no longer tiny, in fact everything is quite large. Small Mario looks bigger here than Big Mario does in a lot of other games. This one looks and plays a lot more like Super Mario World and it has a really nice overworld map. What's nice is that you can visit most parts of the map right away. The game also has you acquiring special abilities like a hat that'll let you float if you get the radish. There are lots and lots of places to explore and this one will keep you busy for a while. The controls still feel a bit slippery and like most Game Boy games that are so zoomed in, it feels kind of floaty as well. I like this a lot more than the first Super Mario Land, with the exception of the music. Most of the music here is decent, I guess. Some of it is awful though, like in the Pumpkin Zone. Still, if you like Mario, you're gonna love this game.
Nemesis is a shooter by Ultra, who is a subsidiary of Konami. This was the first shooter that I bought for my Game Boy back in 1990. The game plays exactly like Gradius with a power-up system of collecting jewels. Each weapon on the weapon bar takes a certain amount of these jewels to activate, and you can only activate it when it's highlighted. It's a strange system and can be kind of annoying at times. You're always watching this bar calculating how many more jewels you need for the weapon you want. And if you collect too many, then you have to cycle through the bar again. This entry for the system feels like a mix of Gradius and Salamander, with some levels having an organic feel to them. The game is short with only 5 levels, and I beat it in just over a half hour. It's a fun experience because your ship controls really well, and as you can see, the graphics are quite amazing for the Game Boy. There's tons of details in all the sprites. The soundtrack is also really good, with melodies from previous games and also some new stuff too. Gradius 2, which is Nemesis 2 in Japan, came out in 1992, but I didn't pick it up until 2012 or so. In actuality, I really don't remember seeing this game in stores or even advertised back in the day. I'm glad I found it because it's a fun experience just like the first title. This time around, the game is much harder and the levels are a lot longer. It still retains the same weapon system, so if you've played Gradius, you know what you're getting into. The game controls very well, but definitely get some power-ups right away since your ship is super slow. The graphics again are amazing, and even though the backgrounds are mostly non-existent, the levels and sprites have some of the most detail you'll see on the Game Boy. The music this time around has all new tracks and they sound great. A sound test was added, which is always a good idea. If you like Gradius at all, both of these games are well worth your investment. Metroid 2 Return of Samus is a sequel to the original Metroid. Duh! The story takes Samus to planet SR-388, which is the Metroid creature's home planet. In this installment, Samus must find and defeat 39 Metroids, and when this is done, it will open up the planet for further exploration. There's a counter on the bottom of the screen so you know how many Metroids are left to kill. It would have been nice to have a map of the planet, but it wasn't meant to be, so draw your own map. At least the game does have save points, which is awesome. Samus controls well, and as usual, she'll pick up items on the way to upgrade her suit and abilities. I really like the spider ball, as you can use it to roll up almost any wall and even ceilings. There's lots of hidden areas to discover, which can lead to necessary items like an energy tank. Definitely a worthy installment for the franchise and a great addition to the Game Boy's library.
Ninja Gaiden Shadow is a pretty nice game. This time you're fighting against an evil dictator whose power is the fear of mankind. He stores his despair in the skyscraper. Pretty heavy stuff. Anyway, we mentioned before that this was originally going to be a Shadow of the Ninja game, and then Tecmo came along and acquired it and gave it a quick makeover. That doesn't in any way, shape, or form mean that this is a bad game. It's actually quite fun. You've got your trusty blade to dispatch enemies with. You also have your ninja magic, or whatever they call it in the Ninja Gaiden world. I'm used to Shinobi, sorry. But now you also have a grapple hook that fires directly above you, which will bring you up when you connect to a proper surface. So if you like James Pond 2 Robocod, then this is the version of Ninja Gaiden for you. The graphics are decent and the music is pretty good, but most importantly, it's a fun game to play. Sometimes I feel that my character can't quite react quickly enough to things, but it's still serviceable enough to play through. I definitely recommend giving this one a try. Space Invaders also showed up on the system. I know, why the hell are we talking about boring old Space Invaders? Well, this one is in fact a little special. Upon starting the game, you have a choice, at least if you're playing this on a Super Game Boy. Choose the Super Game Boy mode, and this right here is what you'll get. Basic old Space Invaders. This was a game I was never tremendously good at. I seem to have a knack for completely missing even when the screen is full of alien ships. But whatever, it's Space Invaders. If you choose the Space Invaders arcade mode, then something pretty cool happens. All of a sudden you get a sweet intro and things don't really look like a Game Boy game anymore. The Super Nintendo has completely taken over the graphics and sound now. Power Plus! You choose from a few different screen settings and off you go. It's still Space Invaders, it's just powered by the Super NES and everything looks and sounds much better as a result. I think it's pretty cool that there's a game that even does this. Small Soldiers is also an interesting one, kinda. This is not a great game by any means, but I thought it'd be fun to show. Here's what it looks and sounds like when you're playing on the Game Boy. Well, plug it into a Super Game Boy and then it looks and sounds like this. Pretty big difference, especially in the music which is being handled by the Super Nintendo. As for the game itself, there's very little action and you mainly just jump from ledge to ledge to ledge. One button jumps and the other runs and supposedly attacks, but I couldn't get any attacks to ever happen. Anyway, these buttons are backwards on the controller, so it makes playing the game even more fun. Again, I really don't recommend this game, but it does more with the technology than most Game Boy games did.
Just like I said, Joe, this was going to be a blast of an episode for me to make. Now, I'm going to ask you, of course, what you personally think of the Game Boy.
Well, honestly, there are some great games to be had. There really are. There are also some piss poor games.
Well, yeah, just like any system.
Sure, but it's just something that I can't quite get into, even though there are, like I said, good games.
Yeah. Is it because the games run slower than like normal games? Because they had to probably for blurring factors?
Well, I don't know what it is, really. It's just something that there's just something that's not appealing, but like I said, I do really like the music in a lot of those games. What did you think about the Game Boy after your first experience?
My first experience or my current experience? I've loved the Game Boy ever since I first started playing it. I remember going to Target before it was released and actually sitting there with my friend playing Tetris like 4 nights a week, during school, just going down there and go, I want to play this, I want to play this. So yeah, I've been on board ever since the beginning.
And this is your favorite episode by far.
Oh yes, by far.
Anyway, what do you guys think of the Game Boy? What are some of your favorite games? Let us know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
Mr. Yokoi, you remember that time that Joe smashed my Game Boy? It's too painful. I miss it. And if you're listening, if you could give me my Game Boy back, that's all I really want. What? What? You did it! My Game Boy! Oh, well, you can keep that though. I don't want that. Thank you. You gave me my Game Boy back. If you're still listening, do you think I could have my hair back too? Hello?
Hello and welcome to GameSack. We've talked about the Neo Geo CD, hell, we've even talked about your stupid Neo Geo X. But now we're going to talk about the real deal, the MVS and the AES.
This is the one you guys have been waiting for, the one you've requested the most. So, without further ado, let's have Joe talk about the system.
The SNK Neo Geo! Unleashed unto the world in the fabled year of 1990, the Neo Geo ravaged mankind with its unprecedented arcade power! 330 mega power! Appearing first in the arcades where it was known as the MVS, the Neo Geo allowed operators to swap out game cartridges as a cheap way of changing games in the cabinet. Many cabinets would have multiple slots for games, up to 6 games at a time. The home version, which was originally intended only as a rental system, is known as the AES. Cartridges for this ran $250 or more, but the games, with only a couple of exceptions, were exactly like their arcade counterparts in every way. That's because the Neo Geo is the real deal. You could even buy a memory card to transfer your saves and high scores between the home and arcade versions. Other systems just can't match the power of the Neo Geo. It runs on a 68,000 CPU with a Z80 to help with the sound.
Well, okay, the Genesis has the exact same setup.
But the Neo Geo offers over 65,000 colors, 15 channels of sound, and 380 sprites on screen! The Neo Geo doesn't need any wimpy background layers. Almost everything is built with sprites. So those wimpy, underpowered systems are weenies. But the Neo Geo is a real hot dog! Final sales numbers for the Neo Geo are hard to come by, but games were officially released for it until 2004.
Joe, I was highly impressed. This is by far the best one that you've done on any system. I mean, what is up with that? You sounded so angry.
Are you saying this is the Neo Geo? Are you saying that I should not give the Neo Geo the respect that it deserves? Get back here. This is the Neo Geo, and with that, let's just go to the games. You're gonna talk about the first one.
Okay. Here's Waku Waku 7, which is a fighting game by Sunsoft. Can you believe it? A fighting game for the Neo Geo? There's only about 5,000 of them. Well, at least it's something different than King of Fighters and Art of Fighting and World Heroes and all that. Even with all those other games, it's refreshing to have something that's a little different. This is a fun fighting game, and it definitely doesn't take itself too seriously. I mean, how serious can it get when there's a robot as one of the selectable fighters? Speaking of fighters, there's 7 of them to choose from right off the bat, and they all definitely feel very different from each other. This is good, as you don't want too much repetition when there's that few to choose from. I like all the fighters. They're very responsive, and as you'd expect, most of them have similar controls as you'd find in a King of Fighters game. The moves are easy to pull off, and the animation of each character is fun to watch. Sunsoft did a great job with this one, and I had a really fun time playing it. With bright, colorful graphics and detailed backgrounds with lots of animation, this is one game that you might want to try. This is a lot better than the Saturn version that Joe covered in our Sunsoft episode in almost every way.
Round 2, fight!
Robo Army is an interesting beat-em-up for the system. It's nice to actually see this genre get a little bit of love, as there's not as much of this kind of goodness as there should be. Well, it appears that Helljeet is about to complete their cyber city with no humans at all. It's up to you to stop them from using human brains to make new robots. This is a pretty darn good beat-em-up. The action is solid and your character controls well. He's got normal attacks with punch and a jump kick. He also has special powers that he can use when the battle becomes too tight. As with all games like this, your special power is tied to a meter that'll drain a little each time you use it. Don't worry though, because you can collect icons which will give you more special powers. The only thing that I didn't really like is that your robot doesn't have a ground attack. The only time he bends down is to pick up a weapon that's on the ground. And another thing, why are they wearing clothes? Do half humans and half robots feel shame? Hey, if I was a half and half like these guys, I wouldn't wear clothes, there's no need. Hell, I'm not wearing anything right now. What are you staring at, Joe? Another strange thing is that you can get a vehicle in this game, but it doesn't have a gun. To kill your enemies, you just run into them. This is stupid, and I'd rather have a gun on my vehicle. All in all, this is a fun game with a good soundtrack, and you even get to fight the gorilla boss from Strider here, so that's cool. I like how he deflates when he's defeated. Play this game if you can.
Here's Prehistoric Isle 2 from Yume Kobo. This is a horizontal shooter and a sequel to the game called Prehistoric Isle in 1930, which predates the Neo Geo. So basically the dinosaurs forgot that they were extinct and now they're roaming around everywhere. And since they're dinosaurs, they shoot bullets and fireballs from their mouths. And since you own a helicopter, it's up to you to make them extinct once more just like they belong. Basically, this game is all about being flashy. There are tons of icons to pick up, but no real strategy to be had. Just immense firepower from both you and the dinos. Almost everything about the visuals is pre-rendered in a similar fashion to Donkey Kong Country, even many of the backgrounds. The game really does look good and the animation is super nice. The music is decent, but the sounds of the dinosaur screaming is just too loud and it gets really annoying. As a game, it's okay. There's really nothing about the gameplay itself to make it stand out other than rescuing hostages here and there. They hang on to your helicopter and eventually a rescue copter will come. Unfortunately, I've never been able to keep the people on for that long. This would be a good one to rent from Blockbuster Video or maybe even Hollywood Video. Street Slam is a kick-ass basketball game from Data East. This one is known as Street Hoop in Europe and Dunk Dream in Japan. Anyway, this is a very arcadey title, and that right there means it's much more tolerable than most sports games. You pick from a few different cities. In the Japanese version, you choose between countries. Then you have a fast-paced game that's not too dissimilar from NBA Jam, except that this is street basketball, and it has generic players. And it's 3-on-3 instead of 2-on-2. But that's because the Neo Geo has beyond unlimited power and can put those extra sprites on screen. The gameplay feels pretty meaty. As you score baskets, your super shot meter will charge. Once it's full, you can do a sweet-ass power move when you score. The control is pretty easy to figure out just by picking it up, and the game gives you tips between each half. There's a few different courts to play on, and the graphics all look pretty nice. I like how the players are pretty big. But then again, you've got to remember that the Neo Geo is the most powerful thing ever created. The hip-hop soundtrack certainly won't be for everyone, but I think it fits the game and it really adds to the quick pace. I don't recommend many sports games, but this is definitely one of them that I do. In fact, the Neo Geo is the best place for good arcadey sports titles.
He's wide open. He right shot. Turnover. Magic on the black side. Half court shot.
Zed Blade is an interesting little shooter that nobody talks about. You start out by choosing your pilot, which affects your speed. Then you choose what weapons you'd like your ship to have. What's interesting is that your ship will always have these weapons, even at its lowest power. Everything can, of course, be powered up though. Even your bomb attack can be upgraded. The control is pretty smooth and the game starts out extremely easy. The difficulty definitely picks up soon though. Graphically speaking, the game looks pretty simple and kinda clunky. It's not horrible, but for a 1994 game, you'd think it'd look a little bit more impressive. The music is pretty damn good and it sounds really clean. It was done by Mineu Namiki, who is known for lots of other shooter games like Battle Garega and Dodonpachi, as well as other games like Castlevania Rebirth. Not all of it is my cup of tea, but I feel that it's the selling point for this game. This one's definitely worth popping a quarter into.
Andro Dunos is a horizontal shooter released by Visco in 1992. At first, this one seems pretty basic, and it is. At any time, you can switch between 4 different weapons, which kinda reminds me of Hellfire on one of those underpowered systems. This diagonal shot definitely reminds me of Hellfire. Each shot can be powered up individually with different icons that you collect. Each of the 4 weapons has its own unique charge shot. You hold down the button, charge it up, and release. But you just can't do this any old time you want. You need to collect an S icon first. And be careful not to waste it because it's easy to die when you're waiting for it to charge. This one gets tough pretty fast and it's difficult avoiding enemy fire. You all know that I suck at shooters, so it's even tougher for me. But the game has unlimited continues, and since Joe is providing all the quarters, why not? The graphics aren't really beyond what the Genesis and Super Nintendo can do, and neither is the music. Still, both the graphics and music are good though. Be sure to pick this one up if you can find it at Goodwill for less than $15. Here's Blazing Star, which is also a horizontal shooter. Joe talked about this one in the mini episode we did about the Neo Geo X firmware update, but since not many people watch that, I might as well cover the real version here. You start out by selecting from several different ships, each with their own style of firepower. You have a normal shot by pounding the button and a charge shot from holding it down. If you press the B button, you can get some variations of your charge shot, but I'm still not exactly sure how this works as I can't get it to happen every time. Not like it matters much anyway. The gameplay is pretty smooth though, there's a ton of slowdown even in single player mode. Also, there's tons of icons to collect. You can spell out the word lucky for some bonus points, and you can collect a floating yellow ball which will hang around you for a bit. Then there are icons that do nothing but enable the female voice to say bonus, and she says it a lot. It's almost annoying. Almost. I guess I could just not collect the icons, but you know me, I can't resist. The graphics are really nice, even though they have that pre-rendered digitized feel to them. The music is also great as well, with a digitized mono soundtrack. This would be a great game to find inside a chest in your grandma's attic after she dies. Eight-Man was one of the earlier games on the system. This is a side-scrolling platformer. Well, I guess it's not really a platformer, but it's not really a beat-em-up either. You walk around killing enemies, which are usually pretty quick to die, even the ones that take a bunch of hits. You have a few different attacks you can do besides your normal punch. If you press punch and jump at the same time, you can do a powerful spin kick. You also have a limited number of bouncy bombs that you can release by pressing the button which has the letter C next to it. Finally, you can collect an 8 icon which will turn your normal shot into the bomb shot each time you press it for a limited time. Each stage has 3 areas before you fight the boss. One of these areas is usually a fast running stage. I like these the least, but I guess they help it from becoming too repetitive. The control is good, but it's easy to get hit as is the case with most arcade games. The graphics range from fairly decent to fairly mediocre. I found myself enjoying some of the music in here, but not immensely. This is a good game to play if you're in the mood for a boring superhero.
Let's check out Aero Fighters 2, which is a vertical shooter. Since I talked about the Super Nintendo and the arcade original, it's only fitting that I cover the Neo Geo sequels. You can choose from many different characters, and of course you're going to want to choose the Dolphin because what the hell? The control is simple. One button fires your normal shot. This shot can be upgraded. The other fires your special attack. These can be restocked. All you gotta do is fly forward and blow stuff up. There's also these floating black orbs that you can nudge in the direction of an enemy, which will usually destroy them if they touch it. I don't really feel that these add much to the game. Oh, and you can blow up the World Trade Center here. You do it for absolutely no other reason than that it's there. Classy. Overall, it's a decent game with some good control. The very next year, Aero Fighters 3 was released. This one has a few changes. Firstly, the game feels a bit more ambitious in the graphics and music department. I don't really care for the new music, but the sound quality of it is pretty good. Also, now you have a charge shot that you can fire off by holding down the shot button. And the floating black orbs are now gone. Other than that, it's pretty standard fare. You still have a wide selection of pilots, though their planes have changed since the last game. Overall, I think I like Part 2 a little bit better than this one. This is Captain Tomade, or maybe it's Captain Tomade, I don't know, but it's an interesting shooter from Visco. You're a cherry tomato and you accidentally fall into a jar of goo. This made you into a sentient being and I guess gave you the rank of captain as well? I don't know. So of course that means you want to go kill a whole bunch of things for no reason whatsoever. Basically, button A controls your left fist and button B controls your right one. That's right, you're punching enemies to death. If you punch with one fist 3 times in a row, the other becomes supercharged and delivers a much more powerful hit. You can grab lots of items like pills, and a lot of the time these just make you smaller. You can also be turned into a baby by the enemy if you're not careful. You can also get helper ships and extra points. The graphics look great, especially the backgrounds. I really like the way they're drawn and the color is nice as well. The music isn't anything special and in fact is kind of annoying. This game also has a hard time running smoothly. It's not your normal slowdown, the game actually freezes for an instant or two when things get crowded on screen. Overall, the game is kind of fatiguing to play and it's hard to recommend it.
Shock Troopers is an overhead running gun game developed by Saris. You take control of one of 8 playable characters and battle your way through 3 different zones, each containing several levels of solid action. There's a couple of ways to start the game. Lone Wolf lets you control one character throughout the whole game. If you pick Team Battle, you can choose multiple different fighters. This is my preferred choice as you can switch between all the characters at any time during gameplay. All the fighters control the same, but what makes them unique is their special weapon. All of the special weapons are fun to use and add a lot to the game. Your character can shoot in 8 directions, which is great, and holding down the fire button lets you strafe in the direction you're shooting. Firing the weapon took a bit of time to get used to, but after a short time it was easy to mow down the enemies. You also have a dodge move which is very useful and I recommend using it a lot. This will save you from taking a lot of hits and is super easy to use. There's lots of gun power-ups to be had, so pick them up when you see them. They don't last forever, but who cares because you know you'll have many chances to pick up a new weapon. Graphically, the game looks good. The backgrounds are fairly detailed and the character sprites look great. There's a fair amount of scaling here with enemies jumping into the action from all over the screen and it's a nice effect. The music isn't bad either and it's worthy of this fun title. Play this game, you'll have a great time. Shock Troopers Second Squad is, of course, the sequel to the first game. A lot of things have changed this time around, and I can't say that they were changed for the better. Firstly, you'll notice that the graphic style is different and now uses pre-rendered graphics like Donkey Kong Country. I don't like this, and I wish they would have stayed with the original hand-drawn style. Another thing that I don't like is that they reduced the number of playable characters from 8 to 4 and eliminated the team battle mode. Usually a sequel adds more to the game instead of taking things away like they did with this entry. Anyway, the game plays the same as the original in that you hold down the shot to strafe in any direction you're facing. You still have an evade button which works pretty well. Sadly, there are a lot fewer types of weapons you can pick up. You still have secondary weapons and that's nice, and you can even ride in a vehicle which is great. One more change that I don't like is the sound that the enemies make when they die. They should have kept the original samples as they are much better than and oh. Lastly, the game has quite a bit of noticeable slowdown in places. Despite all these flaws, the game is still somewhat entertaining, but if you have the ability, play the first game instead. This is Cross Swords, which is the closest thing you're going to get to an adventure game on the Neo Geo. Joe played the sequel in our episode about the Neo Geo CD, so I'll cover the original here. There's not a ton of backstory here, but evil creatures are attacking the kingdom and it's up to you to defeat them. The action takes place in a third-person perspective very similar to the original Punch-Out arcade machine. You can see right through your character's wireframe. As enemies jump towards you, you'll be able to attack them. You have your standard sword slashes and you also have special moves with the B button as long as you have some of them in stock. If you press both A and B at the same time, you'll do a special attack, but that'll drain your life bar. You can block attacks by pressing up or down, depending on if it's a high or low attack. I found this a bit troublesome as it's hard to know which way you're going to be attacked. Sometimes you can call a merchant to upgrade your weapons and buy food if you can afford any of it. You use the gold you collect from defeated enemies. The game is really fun other than the difficulty in blocking a lot of the attacks. The action feels pretty damn good. There's a lot of text in here for a Neo Geo game. The graphics are really good for such an early game and I like the bold colors. The music's good as well, but it rarely changes so it can get old kind of fast. Check this one out.
Alright, we're back, but we're not done because we have more Neo Geo awesomeness to show you.
It's been awesome so far, but we're not even done yet. So damn it, Joe, talk about the next game.
Oh yeah.
Let's take a super quick look at some of the fighting game series we've covered in other Neo Geo episodes like Fatal Fury. This one was directed by Takashi Nishiyama, who was the director of the original Street Fighter for Capcom. While it simply didn't have the grace that Street Fighter 2 did in my opinion, the series is still quite interesting. In fact, I used to hate this game, but nowadays I'm finding myself enjoying it quite a lot. It has multiple planes so you can jump towards the screen or away from it depending on where you are to escape or attack. Some people like this, others don't. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. This game is still great fun if you like the earlier fighting games. Fatal Fury 2 is even better, and this time it lets you pick from more than just 3 characters. It also continues with the stages that change from round to round. This is a great sequel, and it's the first time we got to play with Mai. Can't go too wrong with this one. This series went on and eventually evolved into Real Bout. This is Real Bout Fatal Fury Special here. Damn, I love this game. Everything is better. The graphics are awesome, the animation is great, and the sprites are drawn very well. Switching planes is still here, but now it has its own dedicated button. Purists might hate the modified control scheme, but really, who cares? Just as long as the game is fun, and it really is. The King of Fighters is the longest running series of fighting games on the system. This series is definitely one of my favorites. It uses characters from Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, and other SNK properties. In the first game you could only pick from pre-assembled teams, but soon you got to make your own team, which kicks ass. You have to defeat all 3 of your opponents in each match before they defeat all 3 of yours. In King of Fighters 2003, they finally got around to letting you switch between the characters on the fly. And yes, I like playing as Mai. I wonder why. I just can't recommend this series enough, and for the most part, they just kept getting better and better. Samurai Showdown is another series that kept getting better and better. This one is a weapons-based fighter set in feudal Japan. This gives the game a very unique feel. Special moves are fairly easy to pull off, though you must press 2 buttons simultaneously for a strong attack. Parts 3 and 4 put the strong attack on button C and de-emphasize the punch attacks. Part 5, which was released 8 years after number 4, went back to the original controls. Each of these games are fantastic, but I recommend the latter 3 in the series for the most fun. If you want to see us cover some of these games in more detail, check out our Neo Geo CD episode. Now let's take a look at one of the best fighters on the system, Garo, Mark of the Wolves. This is one amazing fighting game. It should be. It has 688 mega power! Playing with Terry Bogard never felt so satisfying. I mean, well, yeah. This one offers up the top system. Basically, when your life bar is in a certain area, your attacks are stronger, you can recover some life, and you can pull off special moves. You get to decide where this small section of your life meter goes when you choose your character. If you block at the very last second, you can also gain some life back. The gameplay feels awesome, and everything is very fluid. Even playing as this little Strider-looking kid is crazy fun, and I know absolutely none of his moves, but learning them just adds to the excitement in the game. It's weird because sometimes it seems like I can feel the hits in this game, and my Neo Geo joystick doesn't even have the Mad Catz Rumble Pack attached. Maybe it's just how into the game I am when I play, and I get into it. The graphics are excellent, which should be obvious to you by this point. The animation is even better, and it doesn't interfere with pulling off the moves. The music is pretty good as well, keeping the tension high. And yes, even the sound effects are good. I strongly recommend this game and you should get it, but if your lottery winnings haven't come in this month, then you can get it on the Dreamcast where it's called Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves. It's also on the PS2 in Japan.
Super Dodgeball even showed up on the Neo Geo. You may remember I reviewed the NES version in a previous episode, so I was pretty stoked to play this one. This game has one huge problem that I'll mention right off the bat so you can be annoyed like I was when you're watching this segment. As you can see, the screen scales in and out with the action. The problem is that it's constantly doing this, and it only took about 5 minutes before I started feeling physically ill from all the constant motion. I really don't know how this passed the quality control department, but man, it's a bad idea. Anyway, this one plays slightly different from the NES version. In this game, you choose a team of 3. All 3 characters are on the court at the same time, battling it out with their opponents. Each character has a life bar, but the cool thing is that they're all included into one bar. This is a great idea, as the screen isn't cluttered up with 3 different bars. Once one of your players gets knocked out, he retires to your opponent's side of the ring on the outside. From here, he's still a playable character and he can catch passes from his teammates and try to knock out the enemy. It's typical dodgeball action for this game, and it would be really fun if the screen wasn't constantly zooming in and out. If you can handle that, then this is a fun game with lots of different characters to play as, and they even have special power moves that can do lots of damage. Neo Turf Masters is a fantastic golf game. Oh, how I love this one and would love to get my hands on a copy, but damn is it expensive. I'll be sure to have Joe leave me this in his will, just in case he dies like really soon or something.
Oh no!
This is a true arcade golf game, which means there's not a lot of variance to worry about when you're setting up your shot. It truly is a pick up and play kind of game, and even your grandma would find it easy to get into. In all reality, a full round of 18 holes can be completed in about 30 minutes. Personally, I like this as you can play a lot of it in short spurts of time. As you turn the game on, you can choose from one of 6 golfers, each with different abilities. Most of them are fairly enjoyable, and I was able to get the hang of playing with all of them except for the technician. There's something about this guy that I just can't connect with. Anyway, after you pick your golfer, you can choose from one of the 4 amazing courses to play. All of the courses are beautiful, and each one has 1 or 2 standout holes that are really just stunning to look at and even more fun to play. Being an arcade game, you start out with only being able to play 3 holes. Depending on how well you play, your game will go on or it'll end very quickly. For example, if you get a birdie or better, you'll earn more holes to play. A par will use 1 of your allotted holes, and you won't gain any more. Anything worse than a par and you can forget it, as the game will actually subtract the amount of holes you can play. This must have been a real bitch in the arcades having to dump quarters into the machine. But in reality, it's a great idea and makes you want to try harder and get a birdie or better on each hole so you can see more of the course. With great graphics, control, and an amazing soundtrack, this is one bright star in the Neo Geo library.
You can't talk about the Neo Geo without talking about the Metal Slug series. The original Metal Slug was developed by Nazca, the makers of Neo Turf Masters. This brought run and gun games up to a new level of awesomeness. You can shoot in 4 directions, and shooting down is accomplished by jumping first. You can collect a lot of different weapons, each of which has a limited supply. Weapons are usually given to you by POWs that you rescue. All the POWs look exactly the same. I guess the enemy really has a fetish for scraggly yellow-haired guys. Whatever floats your boat, man. Each weapon is also awesome in their own way. You even have a limited number of grenades that you can toss. And of course there's the Metal Slug itself, which is a huge tank that you crawl into, which can not only dish out powerful attacks, it can take a ton of damage as well. There's also random things to collect like frogs or fish or other bizarre things for points. The action is intense and is only aided by the extremely detailed graphics. And I mean detailed. Just look at that. The animation is also very good. There's also lots of humor in the visuals, like this soldier trying to pump water out of a sinking boat. Good luck with that. The sound really assaults you, but in a good way, and it only brings up the intensity. This is an amazing start to a fantastic series for sure. Of course, that was followed up with Metal Slug 2. It's mostly more of the same, but with more. For one, now you can select from 4 characters to play as. You can also ride some new vehicles like this jumping robot thing, a cool airplane with missiles, and even a crazy-ass camel. You can also be turned into a mummy if they breathe on you. You move more slowly and your attacks are weaker this way. This usually lasts until you die or until you get the antidote, but if you wait long enough, it can wear off. If you eat too much food, you can also become fat. Even your bullets become fat, which only makes this game more awesome. The graphics are still crazy good. Unfortunately, there's a ton of slowdown with this one. It can get really slow. Wow, I am not sure what happened to cause this. A year later, Metal Slug X came around. This is an update of Metal Slug 2 which greatly fixes a lot of the slowdown problems. There's also a couple of new bosses and a bunch more enemies in the levels. This one seems to take a bit too much pleasure into turning you into a zombie in Stage 2. Most of the levels are simple palette swaps of the way they looked in Part 2. There's not a ton of new stuff here, but it is preferable to playing the second one. Metal Slug 3 came out in the year 2000. This one starts you out fighting giant crabs and insects instead of people. Yet these things still take hostages for me to rescue. This is a great one. You want to ride an ostrich? You can! There's also lots of multiple paths that you can take. You can even turn into a zombie. This is really cool for the first couple of times it happens. It feels like you're controlling the mummy from the first game, but trust me, it's much cooler. Your special attack is vomiting blood across the entire screen, which is really powerful. However, you'll be turning into a zombie a lot and it can get kind of annoying rather quickly. And like all Metal Slug games, this one has a lot of recycled assets. It's still a great game though. Metal Slug 4 came out in 2002. This is the first one not made by Nazca, but instead by Mega Enterprise, aka Noise Factory. This one has a couple of new weapons and again, some recycled assets. The music in this one is mono and streamed as one giant sample per stage. This allows the use of real instruments like electric guitars and what have you. Heavy machine gun. And the music is Noise Factory's claim to fame, and they generally did a good job with it. It's not CD quality, and again, it's in mono, but it does add something new to the series. The gameplay is pretty much the same as before, with some new character art. Despite having mostly new developers, this one is still a great game. And Metal Slug 5 was released in 2003 and was the final game in the series on the Neo Geo. Well, they went out with a bang because this one is pretty awesome. But then again, all the Neo Geo Metal Slugs are awesome, so that goes without saying. Now you can perform a sliding attack, which I've got to admit feels kind of weird for a Metal Slug game, but it can actually be useful here and there. There's also this thing that you can ride, which is pretty awesome. I'm not sure why anyone would ever build something like this, but hey, I'm not going to complain because I like killing people and things. As always, the graphics kick tons of ass, but I think that some of the new assets don't really blend in very well, like this boss here. It just doesn't look as super detailed as the rest of the game. The music was done in the same way as Part 4, and it's still awesome, though I think I might like Part 4's music more. You need to make sure you have at least one of the Metal Slugs if you have a Neo Geo.
Let's check out Neo Bomberman. If you've played Bomberman on any other system except for the 360, then you know what this game is about. Run around and lay down bombs to blow up and clear the screen of enemies. Of course, you can also blow up obstacles blocking your path, and sometimes a power-up will be revealed. But be careful not to get yourself cornered or you'll blow yourself up in the process. You can play this game in one-player mode where you fight your way through many levels on your own. You can also play battle mode to fight against a computer or a friend. This is a fun game as are all the Bomberman entries and is a good waste of time. Panic Bomber takes the characters from the Bomberman franchise and puts them into a puzzle game. This one plays fairly similar to the Puyo Puyo series where you have to match the colored Bomberman heads. Matching enough of them will make them disappear. If you're quick enough, you can set them up for a chain reaction. Also, every now and again a bomb will fall. Place it on the field and wait for the big red bomb to fall. This red one will blow up anything around it and it will cause a chain reaction among other bombs that are lined up on the play field. Unfortunately, the colors here don't link the same way as they do in proper Puyo Puyo games, and that makes this one much more difficult. See these? These should link, but they don't. Overall, this is a decent game, but I'd rather play Puyo Puyo. Nightmare in the Dark is a great single-screen action game. All you have to do is run around and toss flames at your enemies. Keep it up and they'll eventually become a ball of fire. You can take this ball and throw it at other enemies to destroy them as it finally makes its way to the bottom of the stage. If you can, you should try and turn the enemies at the top of the stage into fireballs. Once you throw them across the screen, they'll take out everything in their path, which will in turn give you a higher score. After a few stages, you'll fight a boss. The bosses are big and look great. They're not difficult battles, but they're still fun to fight. After you defeat them, they'll explode and give you lots of stuff to collect that'll power you up and give you points. Sadly, your character is too slow to pick up everything, but you still gotta try. The game controls really well and the action is fast-paced. I like this game for the bright and colorful graphics and the great looking backgrounds. All the characters look great and animate well. The soundtrack is also nice and goes really well with the game. This would be a great game to play around Halloween to get you in the mood for scary things, even though the game itself isn't that scary. But what's truly horrifying is that this game never came out anywhere except in Japan. But luckily, the Neo Geo is region-free, so you can import it. Zoopapa is another single-screen action game. I really like these kinds of games, so it's pretty much a given that I'd like this one. The character that you control runs around and grabs the little guys that look just like him. He can take these guys and throw them at his enemies. These little ones don't kill the enemies, but they do stun them by beating them up. This gives you time to come over and finish the job. You don't have to do anything but walk into them and they explode. An exploding enemy is great because it'll take out any enemies that are close by, and the more of your little guys that are on the enemy, the bigger the blast radius. So do your best to always collect those little guys when they're just hanging out waiting for you. After you beat each stage in a world, you get taken to a boss fight, and these are really fun, but they're not too challenging. When you first start the game, you can choose a world to conquer. For some reason, once you beat that world, you can't choose the next one, and it's chosen for you. This is a little strange, but it's no big deal. The stages are set up great and are really easy to navigate. The game's backgrounds are really colorful with lots of detail, and after each stage that you clear, they change. This is great as you're not looking at the same background over and over again. You also get a fairly decent soundtrack that I kinda like. If you happen to be in an arcade, be sure to check out the Neo Geo cabinets for this one. You might just get lucky and this game will be there for you to play. Just kidding, it's gonna have World Heroes in it instead.
Sengoku is an early beat-em-up for the system. You're just some righteous dude fighting evil Japanese demons in the post-apocalyptic city. Quite often you'll be sucked up into Japanese demon heaven to kick some ass there. Sometimes the souls of the dead warriors will offer to help you out in your quest. You can change into any of these souls that you've acquired at any time. But be careful because they'll only fight for 60 seconds. After that, they've had enough of you and they get the hell out of Dodge. The gameplay is fun at first, but the stiff controls kind of wear on you quickly. The graphics are typical of an early Neo Geo game. The music isn't bad with some haunting Japanese themes when you're in Japanese demon heaven. It's not really a standout title, to be honest. I don't have access to Sengoku 2, but let's see if Sengoku 3 from Noise Factory is any better. This one is more of a weapons-based beat 'em up, but you can still punch and jump too. And yeah, this one is definitely a lot better. In fact, it has pretty much nothing to do with the original game, so I'm not even sure why it's part of the Sengoku franchise. You start out by choosing one of 4 characters to play as. Damn, my dude looks like Strider. You can attack with your weapon, punch, jump, and also throw weapons you collect like stars or bombs. My favorite character to play is this green guy, but you have to beat him up to unlock him. He's not available right away. Starting on stage 3, the game gets incredibly difficult and honestly kind of boring. The common enemies require so many hits to die that I begin nodding off while playing, and there's just so many of these types of enemies. The only thing that kept my attention was the music. It's really good. But like other Noise Factory games, it's in mono. They love mono. The graphics are also really good with nice colorful backgrounds. I kept playing until stage 6. The music in the stage was boring, so there was really nothing left to keep my attention while fighting tons of the same enemies, so I just shut it off. And I do recommend that you pick this one up if you find it at a garage sale.
And that's the Neo Geo AES and MVS for you. Dave, what do you think of the Neo Geo?
I wish I had a lot more money, Joe, because I would be buying all that stuff up like crazy.
Well, why don't you just get a better job so you can afford the pinnacle of gaming?
Because I'm just not that awesome, I guess. I don't know.
You are not awesome. You're playing these weenie systems like the Super Nintendo.
The weenie system, yeah, exactly. Anyways, what do you guys think about the Neo Geo AES and MVS? Do you own one? Do you like all the games for it? Do you wish you had one?
Yeah, let us know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
I'll give you a weenie system.
Oh, please. I'm the Neo Geo, bitch. You ain't cool enough to hang with me. Go on, get out. Yeah, as if. I only play good games. Go away. A Street Fighter game? Yeah, right. You probably don't even max out at 330 megs. Ooh, an adventure game. Sorry, buddy, but I'm too busy being king of the arcade. Oh, hello now. This is what I'm talking about. Bigger, badder, better. Well, come on, I want to play some Fatal Fury. Oh, hey now, this isn't what I had in mind at all. Oh, get away from me, you filthy pork!
Hello and welcome to GameSack. That's right, we're back with the regular episodes once every 2 weeks, and this time we're talking about the PlayStation 2.
That's right. We've gotten a lot of requests to do this episode, and we figured this would be a great time to do it.
Yeah.
So why don't we, as usual, turn this to Joe to give us a breakdown of the system.
Let's check it out.
The Sony PlayStation 2. Released in the futuristic year of 2000, the PlayStation 2 was Sony's second highly successful console. It was the first video game console to use DVDs for media, and it helped usher the format into homes as it was the first DVD player for many people. Many games were actually on the CD format, which can be identified by their blue undercoat. Included was the DualShock 2 controller, which added pressure-sensitive buttons which fortunately were not used very much. The system could be displayed and used either horizontally or vertically, though some people do report increased read errors and scratched CDs when used in vertical mode. Later on, a network adapter was sold which allowed for online play as well as the installation of a hard drive. In 2004, Sony introduced a slimline model PS2 which was significantly more compact, features a flip-top lid as well as built-in internet jacks. The PlayStation 2 runs on a 294.9 MHz CPU called the Emotion Engine and features 32 megabytes of RAM. The GPU clocks in at 147.4 MHz, features 4 megabytes of its own RAM, and can push 66 million polygons per second. The PS2 was a juggernaut with nearly 4,000 officially released games. It's also the best-selling video game console in the history of forever, clocking in at over 155 million units sold.
Highest selling console, yeah, I can see that, but I'm curious, do you think any of those were because of the discrete error problems that the system had, that maybe people just had to rebuy the console again? Does that fluff up those numbers?
Oh, I think it does. I think it definitely does. Anyway, we've got lots of games to check out, so let's just get right on into it.
Klonoa saw a sequel on the PS2 in the form of Klonoa 2: Lunate's Veil. This is another really good entry into the series that doesn't stray far from the first game in terms of gameplay. Sure, the story is completely different, but to be honest, I was skipping the story just after the second or third cutscene. Firstly, because it started out completely uninteresting. Secondly, because the cutscenes seemed to drag on a lot longer than they needed to, and the character voices are pretty annoying. Again, as far as gameplay, this one is right up there with the first. Klonoa controls the same, which is great. He can also grab enemies and use them to gain more height during a jump, and it basically acts like a double jump. He can also use these guys that he's grabbed to kill other enemies or open eggs for hidden items like hearts which refill your life bar. The levels are all really fun to play and retain the 2D gameplay with 3D backgrounds. Each level has multiple paths you can take, so keep your eye open for what might be a branching path. Thanks to the awesome power of the PS2, the graphics look great and each level feels different from the next. Overall, this is a great exclusive to the system, and I'd recommend that you get this one if you don't already have it. Metal Gear Solid 2 was exclusive to the PS2 for about a year. It was then released as Substance on the PS2 along with the Xbox and PC. There's a huge storyline going on in this game with many twists and turns, and if you're not paying attention, then you're gonna get lost. In fact, there's so much story being told through cutscenes and dialogue that you'll sometimes feel that playing the game is secondary to watching the story unfold. I've missed many parts of the story because a cutscene has dragged on for 20 minutes or more and I couldn't hold the urine in my bladder any longer and had to go relieve myself. The gameplay is just like the first, as you want to try and be sneaky and get past all the enemies if possible without them noticing you there. I'm not good at that, so I just shoot them with the M9 and put them to sleep. A few new things have been added which really helps the gameplay. The most notable for me was the inclusion of a first-person mode. This made killing bad guys a lot easier and more fun. I still get uneasy feelings playing this game knowing that any second I could get caught. The music really helps add to this with its suspenseful feeling that something's gonna happen. Some of the FMV cutscenes have Dolby Digital 5.1 surround sound, but gameplay is in regular old Pro Logic. All in all, it's easy to see why this game is ranked as one of the best games in the entire PS2 library. It has great action, a long detailed story, and really good graphics and music. However, it also has Raiden, who will be the character you spend the large majority of the game playing instead of Solid Snake. It's definitely not a deal breaker though. Not including the racing titles, Jak and Daxter had a trilogy of games on the PS2. At this point, Naughty Dog had proven themselves as a quality developer with the Crash Bandicoot series. The Jak series would prove to be another very strong trilogy. I've already talked about Part 2, so here's the first entry titled The Precursor Legacy. This game is a very solid action platformer. You control Jak on your quest to fulfill silly tasks by the people around him. Even though they seem like lame tasks, you'll still have a fun time playing. The graphics are pretty amazing with very lush landscapes and bright colors. The game has a day and night cycle which just adds to the atmosphere. One of the highlights is the interaction between Jak and Daxter. Jak doesn't talk at all, and Daxter won't stop talking. I found myself really enjoying all the one-liners that Daxter spits out throughout the game.
Step 1. Stay alive.
Even when you collect a power cell, Daxter has some really funny animations. These types of things are what gives a game its own identity, and Naughty Dog definitely delivered. This game also has a widescreen option, which is nice. When you think about the PS2, I imagine the Jak and Daxter series would be one of the first sets of titles that come to mind, and rightly so, as it's one of the highlights for the system.
Urban Reign is a cool beat-em-up by Namco that people don't talk about much. It turns out that the city is overrun with gangs and crime. You play as Brad Hawk, a hired thug who's gonna clean up the streets. And you do a pretty damn good job of it too. Your main attacks are your strike and your grapple. You'll also be able to do cool attacks like running up walls and the such. Then of course are your special attacks. You have a gauge for this right underneath your life bar and it drains each time you use it, but it refills during the course of normal battle. The game is pretty damn fun and you usually only fight a few punks in each stage. After you win each stage, you get a chance to power up an attribute or two of your choice. Usually between stages you'll have a map so you can play these missions in any order you'd like. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a whole heck of a lot of different locations and you'll fight in the same places a lot. Sometimes after a stage ends, I find my hands and thumbs hurting a little bit from how hard I was pressing on the controller. It can get pretty intense. The game is pretty fast paced and I'm pretty sure it uses the Tekken engine for its graphics. I mean, they're pretty good and they run at 480p and in widescreen. I feel it could have used a bit more color though, but that's not really a big deal. I do like what this game has going for it. Check this one out, it's exclusive to the PlayStation 2. Yakuza is a franchise from Sega with a pretty good sized cult following. The first game here was released in 2005 and is often called a spiritual follow-up to Shenmue. I don't know about that. You play as Kazuma, who is part of an evil criminal family. You start out by doing small errands, but it doesn't take long before you take the rap for killing your boss and serve time in prison for a crime that you didn't commit.
Freeze!
After 10 years, you get out and try to piece together everything that's been going on during your incarceration. The main portion of the game is free roaming, kinda sorta. You generally can't go very far in any direction. The angle of the screen often switches and I found this to be unnecessary and even a little annoying. And you can't talk to every single person like you can in Shenmue, only those with the green triangle over them. You can enter a few shops and buy things like food and whatnot. Often you'll be forced into a battle, but you can get into others if you want to earn cash and experience. I really like that you can upgrade your skills with that experience. But really, what makes this game good is the story. You can see where it's going from 100 miles away, but that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. This is the thing that keeps bringing me back to the game. The graphics are kind of average, but at least there's a widescreen option. The game doesn't have much music, and it feels kind of empty as a result, but the music that is here is fairly good. There's even a Dolby Digital 5.1 surround setting, but only the cutscenes used. It's kind of like Metal Gear Solid 2. Overall, not a bad effort, but nowhere near as good as Shenmue. Yakuza 2 came out in 2008. This one's pretty much more of the same with only a few changes. First off, there's no longer any English voices, which honestly is fine by me since it was pretty bad in part 1. Secondly, the fighting engine is much more responsive. The story is cool. This time, it's all out war between the clans. Many characters return and of course you're going to encounter a whole bunch of new ones as well. The graphics still don't do much for me honestly. And despite that the box indicates progressive scan, this one only runs in crappy interlaced mode. At least they fixed the map so that when you play in widescreen it's now a circle instead of a stretched oval like it was in the previous game. These games are good, but really they aren't like Shenmue at all except that you can sometimes play arcade games and the such. And the arcade games in this world are kinda bad. All in all, I prefer this one over the original.
Rygar, the legendary adventure, was released in 2002. This is a new game in the series and not a remake of the original, although some of the enemies and of course the disc armor are all similar. As you'd expect on the PS2, the game takes place in a 3D world. This works well for the most part, but it does have a few problems. The main problem comes from the camera, which is fixed. This can be annoying because there's several times when you transition from one screen to the next, and when you're pushing one direction to go forward, and all of a sudden the same direction makes you go backward on the next screen. Also, being a fixed camera, your character can get really small once he goes into the distance, and the camera doesn't follow him. Other than that, I have no real complaints about the game. It controls just fine, and the new 3D environments are really fun to play through. The cool thing that I liked about this game back when it was released is that a lot of the backgrounds were destructible. I used to just run around destroying walls and pillars just for fun. As in the first game, you have your disc armor, which is both your weapon and your shield. There are 3 different types that you can collect throughout the game. Each one has its own ability, and you can even summon a creature to help you with an attack. The music is good, and it actually makes you feel like you're in an epic adventure. At the time of this review, this game is super cheap, so I highly recommend getting it as I've had a blast playing it. Shadow of Rome is another exclusive game for the PS2. Set in BC Rome, Julius Caesar has just been assassinated. You control 2 people. The first is a Roman centurion named Agrippa, whose father is accused of the assassination. Of course, Caesar's assassination was a plot by the Senate, and they wrongly accused Agrippa's father. The other character is Caesar's nephew, Octavianus, and no, he's not a butthole. Being that you control 2 people, there are 2 different types of playstyle. Firstly, Agrippa, being a centurion, is all about the battle. It's up to him to win fights as a gladiator and a soldier. Octavianus doesn't fight, but he plays a stealth role. It's up to him to infiltrate the Senate and other places to figure out what's actually happened. He's not totally defenseless and will sometimes need to take out people by choking them and other means to get the information he needs. The game plays fairly well on both fronts. The stealth scenes were a bit more difficult for me than the action scenes, but in time I was able to get how the game flows. Overall, the game looks good. I like the graphics for the most part. There's a few spots that seemed a little bland and colorless, but there were few and far in between. And of course, the voice acting is terrible.
I couldn't even save my own mother.
I'm not sure how popular this game is, and I rarely see it out in the wild, but if it looks like something you would enjoy, by all means go for it. Here's Blood Will Tell by stupid Sega. This game is based on the famous manga series Dororo. For once, I actually really enjoyed the story. You play as Hayaki Maru. Before your birth, you were chosen by the heaven gods to be the one to rid the world of demon gods. The demon gods, finding this out, corrupted your father to let them have you. There's 48 demons in this game, and each one has taken a piece of your body. You're saved by a doctor, and he performs surgery on you and gives you swords for arms and a cannon in your leg. Now it's up to you to find the 48 demon fiends and collect the missing pieces to your body. As you start the game, it's all in black and white. The second demon you slay gives you back your eyeball. After this, everything turns to color. And you're not alone in your quest. A nagging little thief named Dororo follows you and actually helps you out in battle. There's many times that you actually take control of Dororo and use his sneaky skills to find out information for you. Overall, the game is great fun to play, and the hack and slash fighting doesn't get super annoying like other games out there. Graphically, the game looks really nice on the PS2. I wonder what it would have looked like on the Dreamcast. We'll never know. But I do have one complaint about this game. It has a fixed camera, and again, this can sometimes be a huge pain in the ass. Like here, where you're running towards the screen. You know there's an enemy coming up, but you have to actually run into them before you can see them. This is not good. Otherwise, this is a fun game, and I don't think that it's widely known, as I never hear anybody talking about it. If you see it at your local thrift store, buy it.
There's lots of Ratchet & Clank games, so let's take a look at Ratchet & Clank Going Commando. This is the second game in the series. Ratchet and Clank are relaxing after saving the day in the last game when suddenly they're called into action by the head of Megacorp. You need to retrieve an experiment that's been stolen. You take control of Ratchet and Clank eventually goes and gets himself kidnapped. Ratchet's main form of attack is his giant-ass wrench. He can also throw it for long-range attacks. You can buy new weapons and even level them up. The game's currency is nuts and bolts, and you get it by killing enemies or smashing boxes. Be careful of the red boxes though, as predictably they'll explode. You'll be getting lots of items to use throughout the game, all of which are selected by holding down the triangle button. As a 3D platformer, it's mostly well made and fun to play. The camera usually guides itself, but you can recenter or rotate it if you need, and you're gonna need to do that a lot. This one even has shooting scenes in space! Here is where you collect Raritanium, which is only slightly less ridiculous than Unobtainium. I like these space battles, they're pretty fun to play. Most stages have multiple tasks that can be completed. The graphics aren't bad, but the colors do seem kind of muted, and that was the case on many games in that era. 480p is supported, as is widescreen, so that's cool. For some reason though, this game starts to give me motion sickness after about an hour of playing. I don't know what it is, if it's the way the camera moves or what, but it happens. Still, overall, it's not a bad game, and there's a lot to do here. Firefighter FD18 from Konami is one that I've never heard anyone really mention. You play as a firefighter and it's your goal to rescue all of the trapped people on any given stage. Thankfully, you have a fire hose with infinite length and it never gets tangled on anything. You also have an axe to bust through obstacles. The game is pretty intense. Now don't try to put out all the fires because that's impossible, just focus on rescuing the people. Be careful though, because just like real life, some of the fires have life bars. Once you defeat these fire demons, the fire in your immediate area is pretty much out. Despite being pretty fun overall, I do have a couple of complaints. First is the camera. I set it in the options screen to be like I want, but it doesn't stick to the actual gameplay. There's no way to change it during gameplay and I simply cannot get used to it. Secondly, a lot of areas require that you switch to the axe to bust your way through. This is annoying because you need to press select to go into the inventory screen, pick the axe, go back out, then repeat the process to get back to your hose. And this gets old real fast. But otherwise, this is a really fun overlooked game. Check it out. Odin Sphere is a really cool 2D action game from Vanillaware. You play as Princess Gwendolyn, who is on a mission to impress her daddy as well as die in battle to join her sister. The action takes place on looping stages, most of which have multiple exits. The action is straightforward but still fun, and there's lots of different moves you can do. There's also special attacks which help out a lot. This game reminds me a lot of Princess Crown on the Saturn. Vanillaware made this one before they were officially Vanillaware. Both of them have similar female characters, and both of them have item wheels with items that work in a similar fashion. However, Odin Sphere focuses much less on the RPG aspects. Yes, there is alchemy in this game where you mix this and that and you get a new item. I generally don't like this in games, but here it's pretty simple to deal with. The biggest problem is that you can't carry as many items as you'd like. Nowhere near as many. Each stage is pretty short, but there's a bunch of them in each chapter. You can see where each of the exits lead on the map if you found it. As you can see, the graphics are absolutely amazing with many layers of parallax scrolling. This game would really benefit from being in 480p, but we have to settle for interlacing only. The music is pretty damn good as well. You can always get one of the HD remasters of the game on the PS3, PS4, or Vita, which of course were only released in Japan. Sadly, they're not in English. And if you like Vanillaware, there's Grim Grimoire, which is a real-time strategy game. In fact, it reminds me of various tower defense games in the way that it plays. Unfortunately, this game is hindered by the world's slowest and most boring tutorial imaginable. But the graphics, music, and gameplay are all excellent. I just wish I could skip through all the days of tutorials that this one throws at you and just learn on my own. I really hate forced tutorials. It makes me feel like I'm in school again, and I hated school. God, I sound like a 6-year-old. But I mentioned this game here just in case you live for tutorials and didn't know about this one. If you can get past it, you'll have a great RTS game with Vanillaware quality presentation.
Okay, fine.
The super popular Sega CD game Sylphid got a sequel on the PS2 titled Sylphid the Lost Planet. This game is a vertical shooter and kinda sorta feels like the original, but mostly feels like a new game altogether. Game Arts and Treasure really took use of the power of the system to make a fun game. This was brought over to the US by Working Designs and got a few modifications over the Japanese version. They added analog control and fixed a lot of slowdown, both good additions in my opinion. And of course, being a treasure game, it's loaded with boss battles and you have at least 3 of these per level. Your ship can have 2 weapons at a time, and you can fire these independently with the square and circle buttons, or you can fire them both at the same time with the X button. I'm not sure why you would ever fire them separately, but the option is there if you want it. What's really weird, and I miss it, is that there's actually no sub-weapon or bomb here. After each level, you'll gain a new weapon that you can equip to your ship. Halfway through each level, you'll refuel your ship, which will actually refill your life. At this time, you can also switch your weapons if you want, which is great in case the ones you've equipped aren't getting the job done. Visually, the game looks great. All the backgrounds are detailed, but unfortunately they lack a lot of color. Not all of them are like this, but more than I care for. At times, this game feels like it wants to be a bullet hell shooter, as some of the bosses lay it on pretty thick. This is where I start to fail, as my old brain can't figure out the patterns quickly enough to avoid being hit. Still, I have fun playing this one, and it's definitely worth the cheap price it is currently going for at the time of this review. Here's Ape Escape 2, the sequel to the first game, which was on the PlayStation. You're at it once again trying to collect apes that have gotten loose and are wearing the thinking caps. This time around, the main character has changed to this kid. Yeah, the guy that had plastic surgery to remove his nose. I mean, why else would he have a band-aid where his nose was? As with the first game, you slowly gain a number of gadgets that'll help you catch those slippery little bastards. I mean it, those damn monkeys get very hard to catch the further into the game you get. But that's alright, because you don't want it to be a cakewalk. A bit of challenge makes it that much more enjoyable. The gadgets that you gain access to are useful for the most part, and you can assign up to 4 of them at a time using the X, square, circle, and triangle buttons. The control scheme seems strange at first, but it's really easy to get the hang of. Obviously, this looks much better than the first game. The detail in the backgrounds is much higher and the polygons don't look so pointy. The levels are bigger, but they still kind of feel claustrophobic. This game also has a widescreen option. If you played this game, let me know what you think. If you haven't played it, then give it a try, as it's definitely a good time. This is Zone of the Enders, the second runner. This is a much better game than the first one. As with all Kojima games, there's a large, complicated storyline with lots of twists all throughout. I won't get into it, but the story is much more mature and way better than the first game. Once again, you control the orbital frame Jehudi, but this time you're not a dorky kid. Controlling your orbital frame isn't easy. Every button on the controller is used, and then some. Spending time with it, you'll get the hang of the controls, but it will definitely take time. The camera is what I struggled with the most while playing this game. You do have manual control over it, but damn is it slow. Luckily, you have a lock-on button which will switch between your enemies while fighting. The missions are much more interesting and way more action-packed than the first title. In fact, you'll be doing a lot of fighting all throughout your experience, so getting the hang of the controls early is quite advantageous. With great-looking graphics and lots of cool lighting effects, this is a game that you should have in your collection. In fact, there's an HD remake of the 2 games on the PS3. I haven't played it, but that might be the way to go if you're interested.
ETR reaction gone. Damage level exceeding 75%.
Alright, we're back, and so far we've covered quite a few PS2 games.
Yeah, quite a few, but we still have quite a few to go, so.
Yeah, it's an amazing system. There's no way we can cover them all, but we'll do what we can. Let's just get back into it. Onimusha is a great series that began on the PS2, and it all started with Onimusha Warlords. You're Samanosuke, and you need to rescue the princess who's been kidnapped. You do this on the very second screen of the game after defeating the first 2 enemies. Believe it or not, you haven't beaten the game. She gets kidnapped again. This one's basically a hack and slash version of Resident Evil with demons instead of zombies. In fact, the game began development as a Resident Evil game set in feudal Japan. That explains a lot of the similarities, like the tank controls, herbs you find for healing, the game over screen, and a lot of other things. That's okay though, because this game is excellent. You power up your sword with orbs and collect the souls of defeated enemies. You can then use these souls to power up your equipment and your items. The switching camera can get disorienting at times, as can the controls, but it's all good once you get used to them. My biggest complaint would be that fumbling through the menu screen is not as intuitive as it could be, especially when you're just trying to look at your map. It's just too many button presses to get there. But that's really only a minor gripe in an otherwise outstanding package with excellent graphics and perfectly fitting music. If you can't adapt to the controls, find a friend who can and watch them play.
Go, Ronaldo! Fight the belly of that maggot and feast upon his bloody flesh!
This is Oz, over Zenith, or Oz, sort of Ateria depending on your region. This Konami game came out in Japan and Europe, but sadly never in the US, and I don't understand why. Anyway, you play as Feel, a human with strange powers who teams up with 2 members of Oz who are controlled by the CPU. You're trying to save your little sister Dorothy, who is kidnapped by the gods. Yes, this game is called Oz, and her name is Dorothy. And if that's not enough, your cat's name is Toto. He can fly and even talk. And just like the books and the movie itself, the gameplay mainly consists of juggling enemies back and forth between 3 characters until they die. This is a very important technique that you need to get used to as quickly as you can. Fortunately, it's not that hard to get the hang of, you just have to listen for when your name is called. When all 3 of you juggle the same enemy without it hitting the ground, a bar will go up on the right. This allows you to do a special attack. You'll need to do this to break certain items in some stages. It's also very handy for defeating bosses. The more you juggle, the higher your level gets. So if you can get it up to level 2, you and a team member will combine for an even stronger attack. You get the idea. The game may seem kind of repetitive, but personally I found it addictive back when I was playing the Japanese version, and I still do now. Though playing the European version here is much nicer because I can read the text in the store where you can upgrade all your characters. The graphics are straight out of Konami's Castlevania PS2 games, and that's not a bad thing. The music is awesome as it was done by Michiru Yamane, who did Castlevania Bloodlines on the Genesis and of course Symphony of the Night. This is a really fun game that I'm sad never came out here.
This is Sly Cooper in the Thievius Raccoonus. Sly had 3 games released to the PS2, and this is the first one. Sly, being a raccoon, is of course a master thief. Aided by your 2 friends Bentley and Murray, you're out to get your family's book back called the Thievius Raccoonus. This incriminating book holds all of your family's greatest thieving moves, so it's important that you get it back because, you know, every smart thief keeps track of all their wrongdoings. Sly controls really well, and he uses his cane to help him get around. Just like a thief, he's sneaky and doesn't want to be seen. But when you are seen by enemies, it's not bad since they're usually dispatched with 1 hit. Every level has lots of stuff to collect, and some of it's pretty useful. If you collect the required number of bottles in each level, Bentley the Turtle can decipher a code to allow you to open a safe. These safes have valuable items in them like pages from your stolen book. Getting these back will teach you new moves to use during gameplay. As you can see, the developers went with a cel-shaded look to the graphics. I like this, and I think it turned out really nice. The Sly Cooper games are a great set of titles for the PS2 and one that really helped define the system back in the day. Alright, let's break this episode up a bit and talk about the hotshot sports games from Sony. I've said it once and I'll say it again, I'm not a fan of sports video games. If you look through my collection, it'd be very hard for you to find any, and the ones that you do find will be mainly golf. Speaking of which, let's start out with Hot Shots Golf 3. This is a great pick up and play game. You don't have to invest a lot of time to get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Honestly, I can finish a round of 18 holes in just over 20 minutes, and that's exactly how I like it. This game features all the modes you'd find in any other golf game. Tournament mode is where you're going to want to spend most of your time. Playing this mode and winning tournaments is how you unlock characters, courses, and a bunch of other items. Controlling your golfer and making good shots is fairly easy once you figure out how to adjust for factors like wind and elevation changes. I like all the courses in these games and they're all imaginary. They have lots of different backgrounds which makes for a lot of variety. There's only one annoying feature. When you're putting in tournament mode, the gallery talks to you and says really stupid stuff like,
"Calm down. It's okay."
"I was calm until you told me to do so, now please die!"
Your ball's in proximity to the hole. That's a conceivable birdie.
Next in the Hot Shot series is Hot Shots Tennis. Unlike the golf game, which has many entries for each Sony system, Hot Shots Tennis only has 2. One on the PS2 and one on the PSP. I'm not sure why, as this is a fun game as well, although it feels a bit more bland. The gameplay is solid and it's accessible for beginners and does get challenging for more experienced players. The first time I played this game, I was able to walk my way right up to the semi-pro level before I lost my first match. There's lots of stuff to unlock, and the way to do it is by playing the Hot Shots Challenge mode. If you're lucky enough to have a friend that likes to play video games based on tennis, then there's a variety of modes for multiplayer. There's not much else going on in this game, and that's why it's fairly bland. Still, it's super cheap, and seriously, you can get it for around $2 and you'll easily get your money's worth for that price.
Sega Rally 2006 is the 3rd game in the Sega Rally series. Never put the year in the game title, guys, it dates the game immediately. This one was only released in Japan. You have your arcade mode, which plays similar to the previous games, only it tries to be a bit more faithful to actual rally racing here. There are no laps and the segments are pretty short, and that means your game is over pretty quickly. The graphics aren't bad, and at least they're in widescreen, but they in no way match up to the rally sports games that preceded this on the Xbox. The music isn't horrible either, but it's different than the last two games for sure. There's also a career mode in case you care about that, and in this game I really don't. These menus are all in Japanese. But the best part is the bonus disc that contains the original Sega Rally Championship. This was available only with the first printing of the game. It's basically just the arcade version of the original on the PS2. This is pretty cool and runs slightly better than the Saturn version, but unfortunately it's not in progressive scan, so it looks a bit half-assed. The music isn't as good as the Saturn version either, but instead it sounds like the arcade version. Honestly, this really makes me appreciate how good the Saturn version actually is. Sega also released a lot of compilations and upgraded games in Japan under the Sega Ages 2500 label. The number refers to the fact that they cost 2,500 yen each. Yep, they're budget titles. Some of the compilations are really cool, like Sega Ages Volume 30 Galaxy Force 2 Special Extended Edition. This one, for example, lets you play the arcade version of the game, which is the first time it came home in 100% of its audio-visual glory. And I tell you, I'd rather play this on the PS2 than the 3DS any day of the week. It also lets you play the crappy Genesis version and even the Sega Master System version of the game. Each of these games have multiple resolutions to choose from, including 240p, 480i, and 480p. Thank you, Sega, for not forcing crappy 480i on us like the majority of other PS2 games do. There's also Galaxy Force Neo Classic, which is a slightly upgraded version of the arcade which allows you to play in widescreen. This is really cool. This game is a trip to play in widescreen, and I recommend it for sure if you can play imports.
Left turn.
Many other compilations exist in Japan, like the Monster World Complete Collection. This has all the Wonder Boy games on it. For example, you can play the arcade version of the first game, or the Master System version, or the Game Gear version, or even the SG-1000 version. So many choices! There's plenty of other Wonder Boy games to play on here as well, and it's one of many great Sega Ages compilations. Many of the Sega Ages 2500 releases were straight-up 3D remakes like Afterburner here. Well, actually Afterburner 2. These are all basically really low-budget polygonal remakes of the original games, and Afterburner here is not one of the better-looking ones. But it plays perfectly fine, I guess. They even did Game Ground. I don't think this one plays as well as the original, but at least the arranged music is amazing. Or how about Phantasy Star Generation 1? This is a great low-budget title, and it's a really fun remake of the original. I love seeing all the new graphics and hearing the arranged music. Everything moves super fast though. Still, definitely a good time here. There's even Phantasy Star Generation 2, which is of course a remake of the second game. Again, this is mostly a cool remake, but the random battle encounter rate is even more severe in this one. Good luck. They actually did a lot of these 3D remakes and put them on compilations for release outside of the US. Of course, none of the ones that I show and talk about here are on this disc. Man, I could talk about these for multiple more seconds, especially Hokuto no Ken here, but I'm getting bored.
Here's Eco, or as I like to call it, Ico. It's an adventure puzzle game starring a little boy with horns who's doomed to die. He finds a wicked queen's daughter who's locked up in a cage. After freeing her, both of them do their best to escape possibly the biggest castle in the history of video games. That's the story, but what I really see is this. The Horde Boy is so happy that he found a girl who isn't totally repulsed by his horns that he will not let her go for anything. All through his quest to get her free and home to his house, he guides her through many perils and fights off the queen's evil shadow creatures who try to get her back. He is so in love with this girl that there's many times he drags her by her arms because he's so afraid that she might change her mind about him. In actuality, the game is insanely fun and chock full of great puzzles for you to figure out. You'll do some fighting at times with the black smoke creatures, and luckily your 2x4 is enough to kill them. Thankfully for me, the game has way more puzzles than enemy battles. Since the horn boy and the girl don't speak the same language, there's not a lot of dialogue, but every now and again there's a cutscene, and these piece the story together nicely. The game looks really good, I think. Sure, it's hazy and a little blurry since it runs in 240p, but it all still looks really nice. A lot of people didn't like this game because you have to worry about 2 characters. For me, it was fun and a unique experience. Okay, here's 4 games that we've talked about in previous episodes. They are so integral to the PS2 library that if I didn't mention them in this episode, we'd be skinned alive. The first game is God of War. This new IP for the PS2 took no time at all to hook me. It features a great storyline that revolves around Greek mythology. There's lots of creatures and huge bosses to battle with plenty of quick-time events and gore. It has really great set pieces that make for great backgrounds to traverse. The music is solid and it's just an amazing game for the system. See also God of War 2 for more awesomeness. The next game is Okami. This amazing adventure game stars Amaterasu, who took the form of a wolf god on her quest to save the land from darkness. Clover Studios did an outstanding job making this game. Most members of this team would eventually go on to form Platinum Games. The graphics are some of the best you'll see on the system, with vivid colors that have a watercolor feel to them. Throughout the game, you'll learn how to draw different designs with your celestial brush. These will help Amaterasu by not only bringing the land back to life, but you can use them to defeat enemies as well. With a storyline that will draw you in and a really good classical Japanese soundtrack, this is a game not to be missed. Next up we have Shadow of the Colossus. This is the adventure of a boy named Wander. He's out to save the life of a girl. Is it his girlfriend? I'm not sure. Of course, the only way you can save her is by killing 16 colossi. These huge beings roam the land freely and it's up to you to find them. Once you do find them, this is where the fun begins. Firstly, you have to figure out how to get on the colossi. Once you do, you must reach a certain point and stab and kill this thing. You'll then get its life force, which will in turn bring back that one girl. This is truly an amazing gaming experience. There's no enemies to fight besides the colossi. It's just you roaming the land and figuring out how to take these mountain-sized beings down. This is definitely one of the highlights of the PS2 library, so do yourself a favor and play it. There's also an HD remake of this paired with Eco for the PS3. Lastly, here's Gran Turismo 4. This is a racing simulator. You race cars. It looks nice and shiny and even has 1080i HD mode, but you can play it in 480p as well. It's nice if you like this kind of stuff.
Do you want to add anything more to that, Dave?
No.
Okay, let's cover just a couple more games. Suikoden 3, or at least I think that's how it's pronounced, is one of the many RPGs on the system. Now, to be honest, I've heard a lot of bad things about this one, but I'm gonna judge it for myself. You start out by choosing your character. Each character has their own story to play through, but they all intertwine. It's very similar to how Shining Force 3 on the Saturn works with its 3 different scenarios, except that the PlayStation 2 has amazing DVD power! So you don't need to buy 3 separate games. As for the story, let's just say there are groups of people with differences and wackiness ensues. The battle system works pretty well. The battles are fast-paced and usually don't get annoying. There is one thing that's odd though. You must divide your party into multiple groups of 2 characters each. Each group is controlled by a single command such as attack, defend, or using runes. I'm not sure why they did this, but I guess it doesn't bother me too much. Of course, you can usually just get away using auto battle if you want to be quick and sloppy about it. The camera usually works fine, but sometimes it seems to have a hard time keeping up. It also makes it difficult to walk in a straight line. This isn't game breaking or anything, but it's annoying. The graphics aren't too bad, and generally the game looks fairly nice. The music's good, but it's not as nice as it was in the first game. I haven't had the chance yet to play through part 2 though. I hear that's the really good one. Still though, this game does make me want to keep playing and sink hours into it, so I'd say it's not as bad as I've heard. An even better RPG in my opinion is Shadow Hearts by Aruze and Midway. This one is a lot more demonic, but that's okay because hey, who doesn't like demons? They're cute. Anyway, you are Yuri and you're protecting this girl named Alice. She's full of mystery and creepy people seem to really want to get a hold of her, and it's your job to prevent that. This game is really, really good. As a character, Yuri has a lot of his own demons to deal with both figuratively and literally. I like the fact that the gameplay itself isn't super convoluted with mechanics like combining, cooking, or fusing things, or 16 types of magic each requiring special attention and knowledge and all that stuff which over-designed games love to have. The battle system is cool with its timing attacks. You basically have to press the button as the needle spins around the wheel. The better your timing, the more effective your attack is. The battles are random, but they don't appear often enough to be too annoying. Overall though, the game is a lot of fun to play. The story is actually interesting and the music is fantastic as well. I definitely recommend this one, and it even got 2 sequels on the system.
All right, there's a nice little look at the PS2 for you.
Little as in 45 minutes little.
Little, yeah, exactly. But, you know, considering there's almost 4,000 games in the library, we're obviously going to forget a lot.
We totally forgot, or we just couldn't include them.
Yeah, and that's probably more the reason.
But enough of that. What is your favorite game on the PS2, or favorite set of games? Because there are a ton of games. It's a fantastic system.
Yeah, definitely. Tell us. We'd like to know. Maybe there's something out there we haven't played since there's so many games there that maybe we should know about.
Guarantee it. Yeah. Anyway, what do you guys think of the system? And in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
Heads up, the PS2 is in town and I have over 3,000 games. I'm the baddest boy in video gaming. I'm the Sega Genesis and I disagree. Is that so? Well, I've got Suckum US Navy SEALs. Well, I've got Green Dog. That ain't nothing compared to Kingdom Hearts 2. Green Dog. I've got Ridge Racer 5. Green Dog. I wish I had Green Dog. Yeah, Green Dog.